In the depths of a forgotten library, among dusty shelves whispering lost tales, rests an ancient manuscript bound in worn leather and marked by time. This is no ordinary text, but a gateway to a universe of inner transformation. Its pages hold the secrets of those who have journeyed from the darkness of poverty to the radiance of success. The author James Allen, a mysterious scholar of the 19th century, wove his words with ancestral wisdom and a profound vision of life. Legends tell that Allen, in his voluntary seclusion in a cabin on the edge of the known world, was visited by a mountain sage who imparted sacred knowledge that would transform his life and that of those who discovered his work. Now the whisper of the wind among the pages of this ancient manuscript resonates like a distant echo from the past, beckoning those who seek beyond superficial appearances and fleeting riches. Are you ready to uncover the secrets of the creative mind, to unveil the mysteries of success buried within the human experience? Prepare yourself to embark on a journey into the unknown, where every word penned by James Allen will guide you toward deep understanding and the transformative power of your own destiny. The path to prosperity, the choice of evil. Discomfort, pain, and sorrow are the shadows of life. There is no heart in the world that has not felt the sting of pain, no mind that has not been shaken in the dark waters of trouble, no eye that has not shed burning and abundant tears of indescribable anguish. There is no home where the great destroyers, sickness and death, have not penetrated, breaking heart after heart and casting their dark mantle of sadness over all. In the solid and seemingly indestructible nets of evil, everyone is more or less trapped. Pain, misfortune, and bad luck await humanity, seeking to escape or somehow alleviate the darkness that shadows them. Men and women blindly rush into countless paths where they hope to enter affectionately into a happiness that will not come. Thus the drinker and the prostitute delight in sensual excitements. Thus the exclusive aesthete withdraws from the world's sorrows and surrounds themselves with enervating luxuries. Thus the one who thirsts for wealth or fame enslaves everything to achieve that goal. Thus those who seek comfort in the fulfillment of religious rituals, and to all, it seems that the sought-after happiness arrives, and the soul is temporarily numbed in a sweet security, in an intoxicating forgetfulness of the existence of evil. But ultimately, the day of illness or great temptation, pain or misfortune will come, suddenly entering an unstrengthened soul, and the fabric of their imaginary bliss will tear. Thus, over the head of every personal joy hangs the sword of Damocles of pain, ready to fall at any moment and crush the soul that is not protected by knowledge. The child cries to grow up, while men and women sigh after the lost happiness of childhood. The poor feel the chains of poverty to which they are shackled, and the rich often live in fear of poverty or travel the world searching for fleeting shadows they call happiness. Sometimes the soul feels it has found a sure peace and happiness by adopting a certain religion, embracing an intellectual philosophy, or building an intellectual or artistic ideal. But any overwhelming temptation proves that the religion is inadequate or insufficient, that theoretical philosophy proves to be a futile point, or that the statuary ideal on which the devotee has worked for years shatters to pieces at their feet. So is there no way to escape pain and sorrow, no way to break the bonds of evil? Is permanent happiness, assured prosperity, and lasting peace a foolish dream? There is no path, and I say this with joy, by which evil can be eradicated forever. There is a process by which sickness, poverty, or any adverse condition or circumstance can be set aside to never return. There is a method by which permanent prosperity can be assured, free from any fear of the return of adversity, and there is a practice by which uninterrupted and eternal peace and happiness can be shared and realized. The beginning of the path, leading to this glorious realization, is the acquisition of a correct understanding of the nature of evil. It is not enough to deny or ignore evil. One must understand it. It is not enough to pray to God to eliminate evil. One must discover why it is there and what lesson it has for us. It is useless to lament over the chains that hold us. You must know why and how you are chained. So listen, you must step out of yourself and begin to examine and understand yourself. you must stop being a disobedient child in the school of experience and start humbly and patiently learning the lessons that are set for your edification and final perfection. For evil, when properly understood, reveals itself not as an unlimited power or principle in the universe, but as a transitory phase of human experience, and thus it becomes a teacher for those who are ready to learn. Evil is not an abstract thing outside of you. It is an experience in your own heart, and it is only by patiently examining and rectifying your heart that you will gradually be led to discover the origin and nature of evil, which will necessarily be followed by its complete eradication. All evil is corrective and restorative, therefore it is not permanent. It has its roots in ignorance of the true nature and relationships of things. As long as we remain in this state of ignorance, we remain subject to evil. There is no evil in the universe that is not the result of ignorance, and that would not lead us, if we were prepared and willing to learn its lesson, to a higher wisdom, and then disappear. But men remain in evil, and it does not disappear because men are not willing or prepared to learn the lesson it has come to teach. I knew a child who every evening when his mother put him to bed, cried to play with the candle, and one night, when his mother momentarily turned away, the child grabbed the candle. The result was inevitable, and the child never wanted to play with it again. Through this simple but foolish act, he perfectly learned the lesson of obedience and acquired the knowledge that fire burns. This incident is a complete illustration of the nature, meaning, and final result of all sin and evil. Just as the child suffered from his own ignorance of the true nature of fire, older children suffer from their ignorance of the true nature of the things for which they cry and struggle and which hurt them when they obtain them. The only difference is that in the latter case, the ignorance and evil were more deeply rooted and obscure. Evil has always been symbolized by darkness and good by light, and within the symbol lies the perfect interpretation of reality. For just as light always floods the universe, and darkness is merely a small spot or shadow cast by a small body intercepting a few rays of the unlimited light, so the light of supreme good is the positive and life-giving power that floods the universe. While evil is the dark shadow cast by the self, intercepting and obstructing the illuminating rays that seek to penetrate when night envelops the world with its black and impenetrable mantle. No matter how dense the darkness, it covers only a small part of 1/2 of our small planet. For the whole universe is filled with bright light, and every soul knows it will wake up in the light in the morning. Know then that when the dark gloom of pain, sorrow, or misfortune settles in your souls, and you stumble with weary and uncertain steps, you are merely interposing your own personal desires between yourself and the unlimited light of joy and happiness. The dark shadows that envelop you are cast by nothing other than yourselves, for the only ones who can do so are you. And just as external darkness is nothing more than a dark negativity, a reality that comes from nowhere, goes nowhere, and has no refuge, so inner darkness is also a dark negativity passing over the evolving and light-born soul. I imagine you have heard someone say, "But why go through the darkness of evil?" Because through ignorance you chose to do so, and because in doing so you can understand both good and evil. Thus you can appreciate the light more after passing through the darkness. Just as evil is the direct result of ignorance, when the lessons of evil are fully learned, ignorance vanishes and wisdom takes its place. But just as a disobedient child refuses to learn his lessons at school, it is possible to refuse to learn the lessons of experience and remain in continuous darkness, continuously suffering punishment in the form of illness, disappointment, and sorrow. Therefore, anyone who wishes to free themselves from the evil that surrounds them must be willing and prepared to learn and must be ready to submit to this disciplinary process, without which no grain of wisdom, happiness, and lasting peace can be secured. A man can lock himself in a dark room and deny the existence of light, but since it is everywhere outside, the darkness exists only in his own room. Similarly, you can extinguish the light of truth, or you can begin to demolish the walls of prejudice by seeking within yourself the error you have built around you, and let in the glorious and omnipresent light through sincere self-examination. Strive to understand and not only support as theory, evil is a transitory phase, a shadow created by yourself, and all your pains, sorrows, and misfortunes have come to you through a process of law without deviation and absolutely perfect. They have come to you because you deserve and demand them, and by enduring them first and then understanding them, you can become stronger, wiser, and nobler. When you become fully aware of this realization, you will be able to shape your own circumstances, transform all evil into good, and skillfully weave the fabric of your destiny. What of the night, O Watcher? Do you still see the brilliant dawn on the mountain heights? The morning gold shines, its magnificent feet on the hilltops. You still chase away the darkness, and with it, all the demons of the night. Its ray strikes your eyes. Hear its voice, the sound of the destruction of error. Morning comes, lover of light. Even now, the dawn gilds the mountain crest. I faintly see the path where its bright feet now stand. Towards the night the darkness will pass, and all things that love darkness and hate light will disappear forever with the night. Rejoice, for thus sings the swift messenger. The world is a reflection of mental states. The world is as you are. Everything in the universe transforms into your inner experience, no matter what is outside, for everything is a reflection of your state of consciousness. What truly matters is what you are inside, for everything that is in a positive way is contained within your own experience. All that you will ever know must pass through the door of experience and thus become a part of yourself. Your own thoughts, desires, and aspirations shape your world, and for you, everything that exists in the universe of beauty, joy, and happiness, or ugliness, sorrow, and pain, is contained within yourself. By your own thoughts, you make or mar your life. Your world, your universe, is shaped within yourself by the power of thought. Thus will be your outer life and the circumstances that follow. Consequently, what you harbor in the innermost chambers of your heart, sooner or later by the inevitable law of reaction, will manifest in your outer life. The impure, tainted, and selfish soul gravitates with unfailing precision toward misery and catastrophe. But the pure, selfless, and noble soul gravitates with equal precision toward happiness and prosperity. Each soul attracts to itself what is its own, and nothing can come to it that does not belong to it. Realizing this is to recognize the universality of divine law. The incidents of every human life which shape and spoil it are attracted by the quality and power of its own inner life of thought. Every soul is a complex combination of accumulated experiences and thoughts, and the body is nothing more than an improvised vehicle for its manifestation. Therefore, what your thoughts are, that is your true being, and the world around you, whether animate or inanimate, takes on the aspect that your thoughts give it. As Buddha said, all that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts. It follows, therefore, that if a man is happy, it is because he dwells on happy thoughts. If he is miserable, it is because he dwells on gloomy and weakening thoughts. Whether one is fearful or fearless, foolish or wise, tormented or serene, within the soul lies the cause of its own state or states. Now it seems to me I hear a chorus of voices exclaiming, "But do you really mean that external circumstances do not affect our mind?" I do not say that, but I say this, and I know it is an infallible truth. Circumstances can only affect you to the extent that you allow them to. You have been carried away by circumstances due to a lack of correct understanding of the nature, use, and power of thought. For on this word belief depend all our sorrows and joys, the belief that external things have the power to make or ruin life. And in doing so, you submit to these external things. You admit to being their slave, and they are your unconditional master. By doing so, you attribute to them a power they do not possess in themselves, and you actually succumb not simply to circumstances, but to the sorrow or joy, fear or hope, strength or weakness that your sphere of thought has projected around them. I knew two men who at a young age lost the savings they had accumulated over the years. One of them was deeply troubled and succumbed to desolation, worry, and depression. The other, upon reading in his morning newspaper that the bank where he had deposited his money had irretrievably failed and that he had lost everything, quietly but firmly remarked, "Well, it's over. Worry and trouble won't bring it back, but hard work will." Then he set to work with renewed vigor and quickly became prosperous. Meanwhile, the first man continued to lament the loss of his money and complain about his bad luck, remaining the toy and tool of adverse circumstances, in reality, of his own weak and servile thoughts. The loss of money was a curse for one because he surrounded the event with dark and gloomy thoughts, but it was a blessing for the other because he projected thoughts of strength, hope, and renewed effort around it. Circumstances have the power to bless or harm. They will bless and harm all men in the same way. But the fact that the same circumstances are equally good and bad for different souls demonstrates that good or bad is not in the circumstances, but in the mind of the one who encounters them. When you begin to realize this, you will start to control your thoughts, to regulate and discipline your mind, and to rebuild the inner temple of your soul, eliminating all that is useless and superfluous, incorporating into your being only thoughts of joy and serenity, strength and life, compassion and love, beauty and immortality. And in doing so, you will become joyful and serene, strong and healthy, compassionate and loving, and beautiful with the beauty of immortality. Just as we clothe events with the fabric of our own thoughts, so too do we clothe the objects of the visible world around us, and where one sees harmony and beauty, another sees ugliness. An enthusiastic naturalist was once walking through the countryside paths in search of his passion. During his walk, he discovered a saltwater puddle near a pen. As he prepared to fill a small bottle with the water to examine it under a microscope, he more enthusiastically than discreetly extolled the hidden and countless wonders contained in the pond to a nearby rustic son of the plough. He concluded by saying quietly and firmly, "Yes, my friend, within this pond are contained 100, even 1,000,000 universes. If only we had the sense or the instrument to be able to learn about them," said the unsophisticated son of the plough thoughtfully. "I know the water is full of tadpoles, but they're easy to catch." Meanwhile, the naturalist, with his mind enriched with knowledge of natural facts, saw the beauty, harmony, and hidden glory. The uneducated mind about these things saw only an offensive, muddy puddle. The wildflower that the passerby tramples without thinking is, for the spiritual eye of the poet, an angelic messenger from the invisible. For many, the ocean is nothing more than a vast expanse of water where boats sail and sometimes sink. But for the soul of the musician, it is something alive, listening in all its changing moods to divine harmonies. Where the ordinary mind sees disaster and confusion, the mind of the philosopher sees the most perfect sequence of cause and effect. And where the materialist sees only endless death, the mystic sees pulsating and eternal life. Just as we dress events and objects with our own thoughts, we also dress the souls of others with the garments of our thoughts. The suspicious believe everyone is suspicious. The liar feels safe thinking he isn't foolish enough to believe in the existence of a strictly truthful person. The envious see envy in all souls. The miser thinks everyone is eager to get their hands on his money. The one who has subordinated his conscience to the creation of his wealth sleeps with a revolver under his pillow, wrapped in the illusion that the world is filled with conscienceless people who want to rob him. And the abandoned sensualist regards the saint as a hypocrite. On the other hand, those who harbor loving thoughts see love and sympathy arising everywhere. The trusting and honest are not disturbed by suspicions. The generous and charitable, who rejoice in the happiness of others, scarcely know what envy means. And the one who has realized the divine within himself recognizes it in all beings, even in animals. Men and women confirm their mental perspective through the law of cause and effect, thus attracting similar people to them. The old adage, "birds of a feather flock together," has a deeper meaning than is generally attributed. For in the world of thought, as in the material world, each clings to its own kind. If you desire kindness, be kind. If you seek truth, be sincere. What you give of yourself, you will find. Your world is a reflection of yourself. If you are among those who pray and hope for a happier world beyond the grave, here is a message of joy for you. You can enter and realize that happy world now. It fills the entire universe and is within you, waiting for you to find, recognize, and possess it. Someone who understood the inner laws of being said, "When men say it is here or it is there, do not follow them, for the kingdom of God is within you." Thus, what you must do is believe in it, Simply believe with a mind not clouded by doubt. And then, meditate on it until you understand it. Only then will you begin to purify and build your inner world. And as you progress, moving from revelation to revelation, from realization to realization, you will discover the absolute powerlessness of external things compared to the magical power of a self-governing soul. If you want to straighten the world, banish all its evils and afflictions, make its wild places and desolate deserts bloom like a rose, then conquer yourself. If you want the world to cease being captive to sin, restore all broken hearts, end pain, and let in sweet consolation, heal yourself. If you want to heal the world of its long illness, eliminate its sorrow and pain, bring the joy that heals all, and give the afflicted renewed rest, then heal yourself. If you want to awaken the world from its sleep of death and dark struggle, lead it to love, peace, and the glow of immortal life, then awaken yourself. The exit from undesirable conditions comes after seeing and understanding that evil is nothing more than a passing shadow cast by the intercepting self across the transcendent form of eternal good. The world is a mirror in which everyone sees a reflection of themselves. We now rise by firm and easy steps to that plane of perception where the vision of the law is seen and realized. With this understanding comes the knowledge that everything is included in an incessant interplay of cause and effect, where nothing can be separated from the law. From the most trivial thought, word, or deed of man to the groupings of celestial bodies, the law reigns supreme. No arbitrary condition can even exist for a moment, for such a condition would be a negation and annihilation of the law. Every condition of life is thus bound in an ordered and harmonious sequence, and the secret and cause of each condition are contained within itself. The law, every man reaps what he sows, is inscribed in blazing letters on the portal of eternity, and no one can deny it. No one can deceive it. No one can escape it. He who puts his hand into the fire must suffer the burn until it is extinguished. Neither curses nor prayers can serve to alter it, for it is precisely the same law that governs the realm of the spirit. Hatred, anger, jealousy, envy, lust, greed, these are all fires that burn, and whoever touches them must endure the torments of the burning. All these conditions of the mind are rightly called evils, for they are the soul's attempts to subvert, in its ignorance, the law, and thus lead to inner chaos and confusion. Sooner or later, they manifest in external circumstances in the form of disease, failure, and misfortune, accompanied by pain, sorrow, and despair. While love, gentleness, kindness, and purity are refreshing airs that bring peace to the suffering soul. Being in harmony with the eternal law, they manifest as health, success, and peaceful good fortune without deviation. A deep understanding of this great law that permeates the universe leads to the acquisition of that mental state known as obedience. Knowing that justice, harmony, and love are supreme in the universe also means that all adverse and painful conditions are the result of our own disobedience to this law. Such knowledge leads to strength and power, and it is only on this knowledge that one can build a true life, lasting success, and happiness. Being patient under all circumstances and accepting all conditions as necessary factors in your training means rising above all painful conditions and overcoming them with sure progress, without fearing their return. For by the power of obedience to the law they are completely eradicated. As an obedient person, you work in harmony with the law. In fact, you have identified yourself with the law. Everything you conquer, you do so forever. Everything you build can never be destroyed. The cause of all power as well as of all weakness is within. The secret of all happiness as of all misery is also within. There is no progress outside of inner development, and there is no secure foothold for prosperity or peace without the orderly advancement of knowledge. For you who say you are bound by circumstances, who call for better opportunities, a greater scope, perhaps better physical conditions, cursing inwardly the fate that binds your hands and feet, it is for you that I write and speak. Listen and let my words be engraved in your heart, for what I tell you is true. You can achieve that improved state in your outer life that you desire if you resolutely decide to improve your inner life. I know that this path seems barren at first, and the truth is that it always is. Only error and deception have initial attractions and fascinations, but if you commit to following it, if you persistently discipline your mind, eradicating your weaknesses and allowing your soul's strengths and spiritual powers to unfold, you will be astonished by the magical changes that will occur in your outer life as you progress. Golden opportunities will spread across your path. The power and judgment to use them appropriately will emerge within you. Wonderful friends will come to you without your seeking them. Sympathetic souls will be attracted to you like a needle to a magnet, and the books and all the external aids you need will come to you without your seeking. Perhaps the chains of poverty weigh heavily upon you. Perhaps you are friendless and alone. Perhaps you long for your burden to be lightened, but it persists, and you seem to be enveloped in increasing darkness. Perhaps you complain about fate, blaming your birth, your parents, your employer, or the unjust powers that have so unduly given you poverty and deprivation, while others have received opulence and ease. Stop complaining and worrying. None of those things you blame are the cause of your poverty. The cause is within yourself, and where the cause is, there lies the remedy. The mere fact that you complain shows that you deserve your lot, shows that you lack that faith which is the basis of all effort and progress. There is no place for a complainer in a universe of law, and worry is soul suicide. By your own mental attitude, you strengthen the chains that bind you and attract around you the darkness in which you are enveloped. Change your perspective on life, and your outer life will change. Strengthen yourself in faith and knowledge, and make yourself worthy of a better environment and greater opportunities. Ensure first that you make the best use of what you have. Do not deceive yourself into thinking you can move on to greater advantages by neglecting the smaller ones, for if you could, the advantage would be fleeting, and you would quickly fall back to relearn the lesson you had neglected. Just as a child in school must master one rule before moving on to the next, so too, before you can have the greater good you so desire, you must faithfully use what you already possess. The parable of the talents is a beautiful story illustrating this truth, for it shows clearly that if we misuse, neglect, or degrade what we possess, even if it is insignificant, even that little will be taken away from us, for by our conduct we show that we are not worthy of it. Perhaps you live in a small country house, surrounded by unhealthy and vicious influences, and you long for a larger and healthier residence. Therefore, you must first adapt to this residence. Make your small country house a little paradise as much as possible. Keep it impeccably clean. Make it as beautiful and sweet as your limited means allow. Cook your simple food with all the necessary care and humbly set your table with all the taste you can. If you cannot afford a carpet, let your rooms be carpeted with smiles and welcomes, fastened with the nails of kind words, driven in with the hammer of patience. Such a carpet does not fade in the sun, and constant use will never wear it out. By beautifying your current environment in this way, you will rise above it and its necessity, and in due time, you will move to the better house and environment that have awaited you all this time, and for which you have prepared yourself to occupy. You may desire more time to reflect and strive, and you may find your working hours too hard and too long. Then, try to make the best use of the little free time you have. It is useless to wish for more time if you are already wasting the time you have, for you would only become more indolent and indifferent. Even poverty and lack of time and leisure are not the evils you imagine. If they hinder your progress, it is because you have clothed them with your own weaknesses, and the evil you see in them truly resides within yourself. Strive to fully understand that to the extent you shape and sculpt your mind, you are the creator of your destiny. And as you become increasingly aware of this through the transmutative power of self-discipline, you will see that these supposed evils can become blessings. Therefore, use your poverty to cultivate patience, hope, and courage, and your lack of time to acquire promptness of action and mental decision, seizing the precious moments as they come to accept them. Just as the most beautiful flowers grow in the most contaminated soil, on the dark ground of poverty, the most exquisite flowers of humanity have grown and blossomed. Where there are difficulties to face and unsatisfactory conditions to overcome, that is where virtue flourishes most and manifests its glory. You may be in the service of a tyrannical master and feel treated harshly. Consider that this is also necessary for your training. Return your employer's lack of kindness with kindness and forgiveness. Practice patience and self-discipline continually. Turn disadvantage into something useful by using it to gain mental and spiritual strength. With your influential yet silent example, you will teach your employer, helping him feel ashamed of his behavior, while at the same time elevating yourself to that level of spiritual realization for which you will be ready to enter new and better environments when they present themselves. Do not complain about being a slave. Rise with noble conduct above the plane of slavery. Before complaining about being a slave to another, ensure you are not a slave to yourself. Look within yourself, look deeply, and have no pity for yourself. You may find there enslaving thoughts, enslaving desires, and in your daily life and behavior, enslaving habits. Overcome these. Cease to be a slave to the self, and no man will have the power to enslave you. By overcoming the self, you will conquer all adverse conditions, and every difficulty will bow before you. Do not complain about being oppressed by the rich. Are you sure that if you became rich, you would not become an oppressor yourself? Remember that there is an eternal law that is absolutely just, and that he who oppresses today must be oppressed tomorrow. There is no way to escape this. And perhaps in a previous existence, you were rich and an oppressor, and now you are simply paying the debt you owe to the great law. Practice strength and faith. Constantly dwell in the spirit of eternal justice, of eternal good. Strive to rise above the personal and the transient to the impersonal and the permanent. Rid yourself of the illusion of being hurt or oppressed by another, and try to realize through a deeper understanding of your inner life and the laws governing that life, that you are only truly hurt by what is within you. There is no more degrading, unpleasing, and soul-destroying practice than self-pity. Drive it from you. As long as this cancer feeds upon your heart, you can never hope to grow toward a fuller life. Stop condemning others and begin to condemn yourself. Condemn any of your acts, desires, or thoughts that do not stand the comparison with spotless purity or the light of sinless good. By doing this, you will build your house upon the rock of eternity, and all that is necessary for your happiness and well-being will come to you in due course. There is no way to rise permanently above poverty or any undesirable condition except by eradicating those selfish and negative conditions within of which they are the reflection, and because of which they persist on the path to true wealth. This is achieved by enriching the soul through the acquisition of virtue. Without true virtue of the heart, there is neither prosperity nor power, only the appearance of these. I am aware that men make money without having acquired any measure of virtue and have little desire to do so, but such money does not constitute true wealth, and its possession is transient and feverish. Here is the testimony of David. For I was envious of the foolish when I saw the prosperity of the wicked, for they have no pangs until death. Their bodies are fat and their hearts are full of evil. But as for me, I have purified my heart in vain and washed my hands in innocence. When I thought to understand this, it was too painful for me, until I went into the sanctuary of God. Then I understood their end. It was a great trial for David, until he entered the sanctuary of God, and there he discovered his purpose. You too can enter this sanctuary that is within you, this state of consciousness that abides when all that is personal and impermanent is transcended and universal and eternal principles are realized. This is the state of God consciousness, the sanctuary of the Most High. When, after long struggle and self-discipline, you succeed in crossing the threshold of this sacred temple, you will perceive, with an unimpeded vision, the end and fruit of every human thought and effort, whether good or bad. Then you will no longer waver in your faith when you see an immoral man accumulating outward riches, for you will know that he must return to poverty and degradation. The rich man without virtue is indeed poor, and as the waters of a river drift toward the ocean, he, amidst all his riches, drifts toward poverty and misery. Even if he dies rich, he will still reap the bitter fruits of all his immorality. Even if he grows rich many times he will fall back into poverty until, through long experience and much suffering, he conquers inner poverty. But the man who is outwardly poor and rich in virtues is truly rich, and amid all his poverty, he is surely traveling toward prosperity. Abundant joy and happiness await his arrival. For if you want to become truly and enduringly prosperous, you must first be virtuous. It is not wise, therefore, to aim directly at prosperity and make it the sole objective of life. To eagerly achieve this goal, one should instead aim for self-improvement, make useful and selfless service the object of life, and always extend the hands of faith towards the supreme and unchangeable good. If you say you desire wealth not for your own benefit, but to do good with it and bless others, if that is your true reason for desiring wealth, then wealth will come to you, for you will be recognized as someone strong and selfless. If, in the midst of riches, you are ready to see yourself as a steward and not as an owner, examine your motives closely, for in most cases where money is desired with the professed aim of blessing others, the underlying true motive is the love of popularity and the desire to pose as a philanthropist or reformer. If you do not do good with what little you have, rest assured that the more money you have, the more selfish you will become. And any good you seem to do with your money, if there is any, will be an insidious self-praise. If your true desire is to do good, you do not need to wait for money to do it. You can do it now, at this very moment, where you are. If you are truly as selfless as you claim, you will show it by sacrificing for others right now, no matter your poverty. There is always room for personal sacrifice, for did not the widow give all she had into the treasury? The heart that truly desires to do good does not wait for money to do so, but approaches the altar of sacrifice, relinquishes the unworthy elements of the self, and goes forth to shower blessings upon neighbor, stranger, friend, and enemy alike. Just as effect is linked to cause, so are prosperity and power linked to inner goodness, while poverty and weakness are linked to inner evil. Money does not constitute true wealth, nor do position and power. To rely solely on them is to be on slippery ground. Your true wealth is your reserve of virtues, and your true power is determined by the use you make of it. Rectify your heart, and you will rectify your life. Lust, hatred, anger, vanity, pride, greed, self-indulgence, self-seeking, stubbornness, all these are poverty and weakness, whereas love, purity, kindness, gentleness, compassion, generosity, self-forgetfulness, and self-renunciation, all these are wealth and power. As you overcome the elements of poverty and weakness, an irresistible and omnipotent power evolves from within. He who establishes himself in the highest virtue places the whole world at his feet. But the rich, just like the poor, have their undesirable conditions and are often further from happiness than the poor. Here we see how happiness does not depend on external aids or possessions, but on inner life. Perhaps you are an employer and encounter countless problems. When you find good and faithful servants, they quickly leave you. Consequently, you begin to lose or have already completely lost confidence in human nature. You try to remedy the situation by offering better wages and granting certain liberties, but things do not improve. Let me advise you that the secret of all your problems does not lie with your servants, but within yourself. Look within yourself with a humble and sincere desire to discover and eradicate your errors. You will sooner or later find the source of all your unhappiness. It may be a selfish desire, a lurking suspicion, an unkind mental attitude that spreads its poison to those around you and reflects back on you, even if it does not manifest in your actions or words. Think of your servants with kindness. Treat them with the same extreme courtesy that you would like to receive if you were in their place. Rare and splendid is that humility of soul whereby a servant forgets his own well-being for the sake of his master. But much rarer and more splendid, with a divine beauty, is that nobility of soul whereby a man, forgetting his own happiness, seeks the happiness of those under his authority who depend on him for their bodily sustenance. The happiness of such a man is multiplied tenfold. If you need to complain about those you employ, said a well-known and prosperous employer, you will never need to discharge an employee. I have always had the happiest relations with my workers, so if asked how this is explained, I can only say that my objective from the start has been to do unto them as I would like to be done unto me. That is the secret that ensures all desirable conditions and overcomes all undesirable conditions. You say you feel lonely and unloved. that you have no friends in the world. Therefore I beg you, for your own happiness, blame no one but yourself. Be kind to others, and friends will soon surround you. Become pure and loving, and you will be loved by all. No matter the conditions that weigh down your life, you can free yourself from them and overcome them by developing and using within you the transforming power of self-purification and self-control. Whether it is poverty that irritates, remember that the poverty I speak of is the one that causes misery, not that voluntary poverty which is the glory of liberated souls. Overwhelming wealth, or the many misfortunes, sorrows and troubles that form the dark backdrop of the net of life, know that you can overcome them by conquering the selfish inner elements that feed them. It does not matter that, according to infallible law, there are past thoughts and acts to be resolved and atoned for by this same law, we set in motion at every moment of our lives fresh thoughts and acts where we have the power to make them good or bad. Nor is it inferred that if a man reaping what he has sown must lose money, position, and also his strength or righteousness, for in these lie his true wealth, power, and happiness. It is he who clings who is his own enemy and is surrounded by other enemies. He who renounces himself is his own savior and is surrounded by friends like a protective belt before the divine radiance of a pure heart. All darkness vanishes and all clouds melt away, and he who has conquered self has conquered the universe. Therefore, step out of your poverty, step out of your pain, step out of your troubles, sighs, complaints, sorrows, and loneliness by stepping out of yourself. Shed the old and sordid garment of your petty selfishness and put on the new robe of universal love. Then you will attain the inner heaven, and it will reflect in your entire outer life. He who firmly sets his foot on the path of self-mastery, who advances aided by the staff of faith on the road of self-sacrifice, will surely attain the highest prosperity and reap abundant and enduring joy and happiness. For those who seek the supreme good, all things serve the wisest, and nothing comes as evil. Wisdom attends to all forms of raising the good. Dark sorrow hides a star that waits to shine with glorious light. Hell waits for heaven, and after the night comes the golden glory. From afar defeats are steps by which we climb with a purer aim toward nobler ends. Loss brings gain, and joy accompanies the true steps taken on the hills of time. Pain leads to the paths of sacred happiness, to divine thoughts, words, and acts, and to the darkening clouds and the rays that shine along life's way. Then they meet. Misfortune only obscures the path whose final goal and summit are the bright, sunny, and high heaven of achievement. Our quest and stay await the heavy mantle of doubts and fears that obscure the valley of our hopes, the shadows faced by the mind, the bitter harvest of tears, the bitternesses, the miseries and sorrows, the bruises born of broken ties. All these are steps by which we rise to strong minds with firm beliefs. Compassionate and vigilant love rushes to meet the pilgrim of the land of destiny. All glory and good await the arrival of obedient feet. The silent power of thought to control and direct one's own forces. The most powerful forces in the universe are the silent forces, and according to the intensity of their power, a force becomes beneficial when rightly directed and destructive when misused. This is common knowledge concerning mechanical forces like steam, electricity, among others, but few have yet learned to apply this knowledge to the realm of the spirit, where the forces of thought, the most powerful of all, are continually generated and sent forth as currents of salvation or destruction. At this stage of his evolution, man has come into possession of these forces, and the whole trend of his current progress is to completely subdue them. All possible wisdom for man on this material earth lies only in complete self-control, and the commandment, "Love your enemies," resolves into an exhortation to enter here in possession of this sublime wisdom, seizing, mastering, and transmuting those mental forces to which man is enslaved and by which he is carried defenseless like a straw in the current, on the waves of selfishness. The Hebrew prophets, with their perfect knowledge of the supreme law, always connected external events with inner thought and associated disaster or national success with the thoughts and desires dominating the nation at that time. Knowledge of the causal power of thought is the basis of all their prophecies, as it is the basis of all true wisdom and power. National events are nothing more than the operation of the psychic forces of the nation. Wars, plagues, and famines are the meeting and clash of misdirected thought forces, the culminating points where destruction intervenes as an agent of the law. It is folly to attribute war to the influence of one man or group of men. It is the supreme horror of national selfishness and the silent, conquering force of thought that causes all things to manifest. The universe has arisen from thought. Matter in its ultimate analysis is merely objectified thought. All relationships among men were first forged in thought, then objectified. The author, the inventor, the architect, first constructs his work in thought, having perfected it in all its parts as a complete and harmonious whole on the plane of thought. He then begins to materialize it, to bring it down to the material plane of the senses. When the forces of thought are directed in harmony with the dominant law, they are constructive and conservative, but when reversed, they become disintegrating and self-destructive. Aligning all your thoughts with a perfect and unshakable faith in the omnipotence and supremacy of good is to cooperate with that good and achieve within yourself the dissolution and destruction of all evil. Create, and you shall live. Here we have the true meaning of salvation, the deliverance from darkness and the negation of evil by entering into and realizing the living light of eternal good. Where there is fear, worry, anxiety, doubt, problems, displeasure, or disappointment, there is ignorance and lack of faith. All these mental conditions are the direct result of selfishness and rest on a belief inherent in the power and supremacy of evil. Therefore, they constitute true practical atheism. To live in these negative and destructive mental conditions of the soul, to submit to them, is the only true atheism. It is the deliverance from such conditions that humanity needs. Moreover, no man can boast of deliverance as long as he is a slave, defenseless and obedient. Fear, worry, it is as sinful as cursing. For how can one fear or worry if one intrinsically believes in eternal justice, in omnipotent good, in limitless love? Thus, to fear, to worry, to doubt is to deny, to disbelieve. Such mental states engender all weakness and failure, for they represent the cancellation and disintegration of positive mental forces that otherwise would rush towards their objective with power and produce their own beneficial results. Overcoming these negative conditions is to enter into a life of power, to cease being a slave and become a master. And there is only one way to overcome them: constant and persistent growth in inner knowledge. Mentally denying evil is not enough. It must be overcome and understood through daily practice. Mentally affirming good is insufficient. It is necessary, through unwavering effort, to enter into it and understand it. Intelligent practice of self-discipline quickly leads to knowledge of the inner forces of thought, and later to the acquisition of that power by which they are properly used and directed. To the extent that you master yourself, that you control your mental forces instead of being controlled by them, to that extent you will dominate business and external circumstances. Show me a man under whose touch everything collapses and who cannot retain success even when it is within his grasp, and I will show you a man who continually dwells in mental conditions that negate power itself. To always be floundering in the marshes of doubt is to be constantly dragged by quicksand of fear or continuously pushed by the winds of anxiety. It is to be a slave and live the life of a slave, even if success and influence always knock at your door seeking admittance. Such a man, without faith and self-governance, is unable to properly direct his affairs and is a slave to circumstances. In reality, he is a slave to himself. Sorrow teaches, and eventually they pass from weakness to strength through attention to bitter experience. For faith and purpose constitute the driving force of life. There is nothing that strong faith and unshakable purpose cannot accomplish, but it is only through daily exercise of silent faith that the forces of thought are gathered, and also through daily strengthening of silent purpose that these forces are directed toward the object of accomplishment. Whatever your position in life, before you can hope to enter into any measure of success, usefulness, and power, you must learn to direct your thought forces by cultivating calm and repose. You may be a businessman suddenly faced with overwhelming difficulty or even impending disaster, Then you feel scared, anxious, and unsure of what to do. Persisting in such a state of mind would be fatal, because when anxiety intervenes, correct judgment disappears. However, if you take advantage of an hour or two early in the morning or late at night, and go to a solitary place or a room in your house where you know you will be absolutely free from any intrusion, and after sitting in a comfortable posture, divert your mind away from the object of anxiety by thinking of something in your life that is pleasant and happy, a calm and peaceful force will gradually seize your mind, thereby dispelling your anxiety. As soon as you notice your mind returning to the lower plane of worries, bring it back and place it back on the plane of peace and strength. When this has been fully accomplished, you will be able to focus your entire mind on resolving your difficulty, and what was confused and insurmountable for you during your moment of anxiety will become clear and easy. Then, with this clear vision and perfect judgment that belong only to a calm and worry-free mind, you will see the right course to follow and the appropriate end to achieve. You may have to try day after day before you can perfectly calm your mind, but if you persevere, you will undoubtedly succeed. And the course that presents itself to you in this moment of calm must be followed without any doubt when you find yourself again involved in the affairs of the day and concerns begin to reappear and dominate you. You will start to think that the direction is wrong or foolish. Pay no attention to these suggestions. Guide yourself absolutely and entirely by the vision of calm and not by the shadows of anxiety. The hour of tranquility is the hour of clarity of judgment. Through such a course of mental discipline, scattered mental forces gather and are directed like rays of light in search towards the problem in question, with the result that it yields to them. There is no difficulty, however great, that does not yield to a quiet and powerful concentration of thought, and no legitimate goal that cannot be quickly attained by the intelligent course and direction of soul forces. Until you have delved into and explored your inner nature, and have overcome many of the enemies hiding therein, you cannot have even an approximate idea of the subtle power of thought, its inseparable relationship with external and material things, or its magical power when properly channeled and directed to readjust and transform life's conditions. Every thought you have is a force sent forth according to its nature and intensity. It seeks to find lodging in respective minds and reacts upon you for good or ill. There is ceaseless reciprocity between minds and a continuous exchange of thought forces. Selfish and disturbing thoughts are malevolent and destructive forces, messengers of evil sent to stimulate and increase evil in other minds, which in turn send them back to you with added power, while thoughts that are calm, pure, and unselfish are messengers of gospel sent into the world with health, healing, and blessing on their wings, counteracting the forces of evil, spreading the oil of joy over the troubled waters of anxiety and pain, restoring to broken hearts their heritage of immortality. Think of these good things, and they will quickly manifest in your outer life as good conditions. Control your mental forces, and you will be able to shape your outer life as you desire. The difference between a savior and a sinner lies in the fact that one has perfect control over the forces within him, while the other is dominated and controlled by them. There is absolutely no other path to true power and lasting peace than through self-control, self-government, and self-purification. To be at the mercy of moods is to be powerless, unhappy, and of little real use in the world. Conquering selfish desires and aversions, capricious loves and hates, outbursts of anger, suspicions, jealousies, and all changing states of mind to which you are more or less vulnerable, is the task that awaits you if you would weave into the web of life the golden threads of happiness and prosperity. To the extent that you are a slave to these changing states of mind within, you will need to rely on others and external aids as you journey through life. If you would walk with firmness and security toward all success, you must learn to rise above and control all these disturbing and delaying vibrations. You must practice daily the habit of quieting your mind, entering into what is commonly called silence. It is a method of substituting a troubling thought with a thought of peace, a thought of weakness with a thought of strength. However, before this can be accomplished, you cannot successfully direct mental forces towards the problems and activities of life. It is a process of diverting scattered forces into a powerful channel, just as a useless swamp can become a field of golden corn, or a fruitful garden by draining and directing scattered and harmful currents into a well-defined channel. Thus, one who acquires tranquility and subdues and directs thought currents within himself saves his soul and fertilizes his heart and life. As you succeed in mastering your impulses and thoughts, you will begin to feel within yourself a new silent power, a sense of calm and strength that will abide with you. Your latent powers will begin to unfold, and whereas your efforts were formerly weak and ineffective, now you will be able to work with that quiet confidence that commands success. With this new power and strength will come within you that inner illumination known as intuition. Thus you will no longer walk in darkness and speculation, but in light and certainty. With the development of this soul vision, judgment and mental penetration will increase immeasurably. You will develop within yourself that prophetic vision with which you will be capable of perceiving forthcoming events and predicting with remarkable accuracy the outcome of your endeavors. Furthermore, as you change from within, your perspective on life will change, and as you change your mental attitude towards others, they will change their attitude and behavior towards you. As you rise above weakening and destructive lower mental forces, you will come into contact with positive, strengthening, and uplifting currents generated by strong, pure, and noble spirits. Your joy will increase incomparably, and you will begin to realize the joy, strength, and power that arise only from self-control. This joy, strength, and power will continually radiate from you effortlessly. Moreover, even if you are completely unaware of it, strong individuals will be drawn to you. Influence will be in your hands, and according to your altered mental world, external events will shape themselves. A man's enemies are those of his own household. One who desires to be useful, strong, and happy must cease to be a passive receptacle for negative, false, and impure currents of thought, and like a wise head of the family, order his servants and invite his guests, so you must learn to order your desires and assert with authority which thoughts you admit into the mansion of your soul. Even very partial success in self-discipline enormously increases someone's power, and one who succeeds in perfecting this divine discipline comes into possession of unimaginable wisdom, along with inner strength and peace. Likewise, he realizes that all the forces of the universe support and protect those who are masters of their soul. They will climb the highest heavens, traverse the lowest hells, live in their dreams of constant beauty or in the lowest thoughts. For your thoughts are the heaven above you, and your thoughts are the hell beneath. Happiness exists only in thought. Torment is nothing more than thought. Worlds would vanish without thought. Glory exists only in dreams, and the drama of the ages of eternal thinking flows. Dignity, shame, sadness, pain and anguish, love and hate are nothing but masks of powerful thinking that governs destiny, as the colors of the rainbow make the single colorless ray. Thus, universal changes make the single eternal dream, and the dream is in you, and the dreamer longs for the morning to wake him to living and strong thinking that realizes the ideal, that disperses hellish dreams into the highest and holiest heaven where the pure and perfect dwell. Evil is the thought that thinks it, good is the thought that does it. Thus, light and darkness, sin and purity grow in thinking. Think of greatness, and you will see greatness. Look into your mind and you will be uplifted, the secret of health, success, and power. We all remember with intense pleasure when we were children, listening to the ceaseless fairy tale. With what excitement we followed the fate fluctuations of the good child or the girl, always protected in the hour of crisis from the evil schemes of the wicked witch, the cruel giant, or the malevolent king. And our little hearts never doubted the fate of the hero or heroine, nor their final triumph over all their enemies, for we knew that fairies were infallible and would never forsake those devoted to goodness and truth. What incredible joy throbbed in us when the Queen, using all her magic at the critical moment, dispelled all darkness and troubles, granting complete fulfillment of all their hopes, and they lived happily ever after. With the accumulation of years and an increasing familiarity with the harsh realities of life, our beautiful fairy world began to fade, and its wonderful inhabitants remained relegated to the archives of memory. It seemed dark and unreal to us. We thought we were wise and strong in leaving forever the land of childhood dreams. But in becoming young children again in the wonderful world of wisdom, we will return to the inspiring dreams of childhood and discover, after all, that they are realities. The little fairies, almost always invisible but possessing magical and conquering power, grant health, wealth, and happiness to the good, as well as all the gifts of nature in abundance. They begin anew in reality and immortalize themselves in the kingdom of the soul of one who, through their growth in wisdom, has entered into the knowledge of the power of thought and the laws that govern the inner world of being. For him, fairies become alive again as thinking beings, messengers of thought, powers of thought working in harmony with the supreme good. And those who day by day strive to harmonize their hearts with the heart of the supreme good truly acquire genuine health, wealth, and happiness. There is no protection that can be compared to kindness, and by kindness I do not mean mere external conformity to moral rules. I refer to pure thought, noble aspiration, selfless love, and absence of vanity. Dwelling continually in good feelings creates around oneself a psychic atmosphere of gentleness and power that leaves its imprint on all who come into contact with it, like the rising sun dispersing powerless shadows. Thus all powerless forces of evil are put to flight by the scrutinizing rays of positive thought shining from a heart made strong by purity and faith. Where there is firm faith and unwavering purity, there is health, there is success, there is power. Such a heart has no room for disease, failure, or catastrophe, for there is nothing upon which they can lay hold. Even physical conditions are largely determined by mental states, and the scientific world is rapidly approaching this truth. The old materialistic belief that man is what his body does is quickly fading and being replaced by the inspiring belief that man is superior to his body. People worldwide are ceasing to believe that a man is despairing because he is skeptical, and they are coming to understand that he is skeptical because he is despairing. In the near future, the fact that all disease originates in the mind will become common knowledge. There is no evil in the universe that does not have its root and origin in the mind, and neither sin, nor disease, nor pain, nor suffering truly belong to the universal order, nor are they inherent in the nature of things. They are the direct result of our ignorance of the right relations between things. According to tradition, in India there was once a school of philosophers leading lives of such purity and simplicity that they generally reached the age of 50 years. In their time, falling ill was considered by them an unforgivable disgrace, as it indicated a violation of the law. The sooner we realize and acknowledge that illness, far from being the arbitrary visitation of an offended God or evidence of senseless providence, is the result of our own error or sin, the sooner we will tread the path to health. Illness occurs to those who attract it, to those whose minds and bodies are receptive to it, and it flees from those whose strong, pure, and positive sphere of thought generates healing and life-giving currents. If you are inclined towards anger, worry, jealousy, greed, or any other disharmonious mental state, and you hope for perfect physical health, you wait for the impossible, for you continually sow the seeds of disease in your mind. The wise person carefully avoids such mental conditions because they know them to be far more dangerous than a clogged sewer or an infected house. If you wish to rid yourself of all physical pains and enjoy perfect physical harmony, put your mind in order and harmonize your thoughts. Think of joy. Think of love. Let the elixir of goodwill flow through your veins, and you will need no other remedy. Set aside your jealousies, suspicions, worries, hatreds, selfish indulgences, and you will leave aside your dyspepsias, your bile, your nerves, and your joint pains. If you persist in clinging to these weakening and demoralizing mental habits, do not complain when your body is affected by illness. The following story illustrates the close relationship between mental habits and bodily conditions. A man was afflicted with a painful disease and consulted doctor after doctor, but all was in vain. He then visited famous towns known for their healing waters, yet after bathing in each of them, his illness grew more painful than ever. One night he dreamt that a presence approached him and said, "Brother, have you tried every means of healing?" And he replied, "Yes, I have tried them all." But the presence replied, "I do not believe you. Come with me and I will show you a healing bath that has eluded you." The afflicted man followed the presence, and it led him to a pond of clear water. There, it said to him, "Plunge into this water and you will surely recover." Then it vanished. The man immersed himself in the water, and upon emerging, to his surprise, his illness had left him. At that moment, he saw written on the pond the word renunciation. Upon awakening, the meaning of his dream crossed his mind, and upon looking within himself, he discovered that all along he had been a victim of sinful indulgence. He then swore he would renounce it forever. Keeping his promise, from that day forth his suffering began to leave him. Shortly after, he was completely restored. Many people complain of being broken by excessive work. In most of these cases, the deterioration is rather the result of reckless expenditure of energy. If you wish to secure your health, you must learn to work without friction. Worrying, getting excited, or fussing over unnecessary details invites collapse. Work, whether of the brain or the body, is beneficial and wholesome. The person who can work persistently, calmly, and without any anxiety or preoccupation, with the mind fully concentrated on their work, will not only accomplish much more than the hurried and anxious person, but will also preserve their health, a blessing the latter will quickly lose. True health and true success go hand in hand, for they are inseparably linked in the realm of thought. Just as mental harmony produces bodily health, it also leads to harmonious accomplishment of plans. Order your thoughts and you will order your life. Spread the oil of tranquility over the turbulent waters of passions, prejudices, and storms of misfortune. No matter how menacing they may appear, they will be powerless to capsize the boat of your soul. As long as you sail on the ocean of life, and if this boat is steered by joyful and unwavering faith, its course will be doubly safe, and many dangers will pass unnoticed, unlike what would assail you otherwise. By the power of faith, every enduring work is accomplished. Supreme faith, faith in the ruling law, faith in your work and your power to accomplish that work. On this you must build if you wish to attain, and retain if you do not wish to falter. Always follow the highest impulses within you. Always be true to the divine self. Trust the inner light, the inner voice, and pursue your purpose with a fearless and calm heart. Believe that the future will render merit for every thought and effort, knowing that the laws of the universe can never fail, and that yours will return to you with mathematical precision. This is faith and living by faith. The murky waters of uncertainty part, every mountain of difficulty crumbles, and the believing soul passes through unscathed. Strive, reader, above all else to acquire this invaluable possession of fearless faith, for it is the talisman of happiness, success, peace, power, and all that makes life great and superior to suffering. Build upon such faith, build upon the rock of the eternal and with materials of the eternal. Thus, the structure you erect will never crumble, for it transcends all accumulations of luxury and material wealth, whose end is dust. Whether you are plunged into the depths of sadness or elevated to the heights of joy, always maintain your hold on this faith, always return to it as your refuge, and firmly plant your feet on its immortal and unshakable foundation. Centered on such faith, you will become the possessor of such spiritual strength that all forces of evil that come upon you will be shattered like fragile toys, and you will achieve success, something that the person who strives only for worldly gain can never know or even dream of. If you have faith and do not hesitate, not only will you obtain it, but if you say to a mountain, "Move and cast yourself into the sea," it will do so. There are people today, men and women, tabernacles of flesh and bone, who have achieved this faith, live in it, and through it, day after day. Having subjected this faith to the ultimate test, they have entered into possession of their glory and peace. They have given the command for mountains of sadness and disappointment, mental fatigue and physical pain to pass by and be cast into the sea of forgetfulness. If you become the possessor of this faith, you will not need to worry about your success or failure. Success will come. You will not have to anguish over results, but will work with joy and serenity, knowing that right thoughts and efforts will inevitably bring right results. I know a lady who has experienced much joyful satisfaction, and recently a friend said to her, "Oh, you are so lucky. You just have to wish for something, and it happens to you." Indeed, On the surface, it seemed to be the case. But in reality, all the blessing that has entered this woman's life is the direct result of the inner state of blessing she has cultivated and trained towards perfection her entire life. Simple desire brings only disappointment. It is life that counts. Fools desire and grumble while the wise work and wait. This woman had worked. She worked outwardly and inwardly, but especially inwardly, in her heart and soul. With the invisible hands of the Spirit, she had built with the precious stones of faith, hope, joy, devotion, and love, a magnificent temple of light, whose glorious radiance always surrounded her. This reflected in her shining eyes, her face, and resonated in her voice. All those who approached her presence felt her captivating charm. And as in her case, so too for you, your success, your failure, your influence, your entire life. You carry them with you, for your dominant thought tendencies are the determining factors of your destiny. Send out loving, stainless, and happy thoughts, and blessings will fall into your hands. Thus your table will be spread with the fabric of peace. Send out hateful, impure, and unhappy thoughts, and curses will rain upon you, making fear and worry wait on your pillow. You are the unconditional creator of your destiny, whatever it may be. At every moment, you send forth from yourself the influences that will make or mar your life. Let your heart expand, be loving and selfless. Thus your influence and success will be great and lasting, even if you earn little money, if you confine it within the narrow limits of selfishness. Even if you become a millionaire, your influence and success will ultimately be entirely insignificant. Cultivate this pure and selfless spirit, and combine it with purity and faith, singleness of purpose. Then you will evolve from within, not only to abundant health and enduring success, but also to greatness and power. If your present position seems unpleasant and your heart is not in your work, perform your duties with scrupulous diligence. Thus, while you rest your mind in the thought that the best position and greatest opportunities await you, you will always maintain an active mental outlook for possibilities in the making. So, when the critical moment arrives and the new channel presents itself, you will enter it with your mind fully prepared for the undertaking, with that intelligence and foresight that arise from mental discipline. Whatever your task, focus your entire mind upon it, with all the energy of which you are capable. Impeccable accomplishment of small tasks inevitably leads to greater ones. Strive to rise through constant ascent, and you will never fall, for therein lies the secret of true power. Learn to manage your resources through constant practice and concentrate them at any given point. Fools squander all their mental and spiritual energy on frivolities, senseless conversations, or selfish discussions, not to mention wasteful physical excesses. If you want to acquire the power to overcome, you must cultivate composure and passivity. You must be capable of remaining alone. All power is associated with stillness. The mountain, solid rock, the oak that has weathered a storm, speak to us of power through their great solitude, combined with their unyielding firmness against any attack, while shifting sands, yielding branches, and swaying reeds speak to weakness because they are mobile, non-resistant, and utterly useless when separated from their companions. It is the person of power who, when all companions are swept away by emotion or passion, remains calm and imperturbable, alone capable of commanding and controlling. One who has mastered self-command and self-control. Hysterics, the fearful, the thoughtless, and frivolous who seek company will fall for lack of support, but the calm, the fearless, the thoughtful who seek the solitude of the forest exile and the mountaintop to their power will be added even more power, successfully slowing down more and more the psychic currents and whirlpools that engulf humanity. Passion is not power, it is the misuse of power, the scattering of power. Passion is like a raging storm that strikes with fury and savagery upon besieged rock, while power is like the rock itself, which remains silent and impassive through it all. It was a manifestation of true power. When Martin Luther, weary of the persuasions of his fearful friends who doubted his safety, replied at Worms, "Even if there were as many devils in Worms as tiles on the roofs, I would go." Or when Benjamin of Israel collapsed during his first speech in Parliament and earned mockery from the chamber, it was a demonstration of power in the making. when he exclaimed, "The day will come when it will be considered an honor to listen to me." When this young man I know, despite continuous setbacks and misfortunes, was the subject of ridicule from his friends advising him to abandon his efforts, he replied, "The time is not far when they will marvel at my good fortune and success," thus demonstrating that he was possessed by that silent and irresistible power that led him to overcome countless difficulties and crown his life with success. If you do not possess this power, you can acquire it through practice, for the beginning of power is also the beginning of wisdom. You must start by overcoming those aimless frivolities to which you have hitherto willingly subjected yourself. Loud and mocking laughter, slander and futile conversation, jokes simply to elicit a laugh. All these things must be set aside as a great waste of precious energy. St. Paul never showed his wonderful insight into the hidden laws of human progress with more profit than when he warned the Ephesians against senseless conversations and inappropriate jokes, for to habitually linger on such practices is to destroy all spiritual power and life. As you become impervious to such mental dissipations, you will begin to understand what true power is. You will then begin to battle against the strongest desires and appetites that keep your soul in bondage and hinder your path to power, making your further progress clearer and clearer. Above all, have a single aim, a legitimate and useful purpose, and dedicate yourself to it without reserve. Let nothing sway you. Remember that the double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Have the ambition to learn, but be slow to ask. Understand your work thoroughly and let it become your own, and as you progress, always following the inner guide, the infallible voice, you will pass from victory to victory and step by step rise to higher rest. Your increasingly expansive outlook will gradually reveal to you the beauty and essential purpose of life. Self-purified health will be yours. Protected by faith, success will be yours. Self-governed, power will be yours, and everything you do will prosper. For in ceasing to be a disjointed and self-enslaved unit, you will be in harmony with the great law, working not against but with universal life. The eternal good and health you will gain will remain with you. The success you achieve will be beyond all human calculation, and the influence and power you wield will continue to grow through the ages, for it will be part of that immutable principle that sustains the universe. Here is the secret of health, a pure heart and a well-ordered mind. Here is the secret of success, unwavering faith and a wisely directed purpose, and mastering with unwavering will the dark steed of desire is the secret of power. All paths await my feet, light and darkness, the living and the dead, the wide path and the narrow path, the high and the low, the good and the bad. And with a quick or slow step, I can now enter any path I choose, and by walking know which is good or bad. And all good things await my wandering feet, if only I come with an unbroken vow to the narrow, lofty and holy path of purity born of the heart. I remain in it, walking assured, despising those who mock and scorn, on my way to flowery meadows through thorny paths. I can be where health, success and power await my arrival. If every fleeting hour I attach myself to love and patience, remain stainless, and never stray from high integrity. Thus I will finally see the land of immortality. I can seek and find, I can achieve, I cannot claim, but in losing I can regain. The law bends for me, but I must bow to the law if I wish to reach the end of my afflictions, if I wish to restore my soul to light and life, and never cry again. It is not the arrogant and selfish claim to all good things that is mine. It is not the humility to seek and find, to know and understand, to wisely guide all holy steps. Nothing is mine to claim or command, but everything is mine to know and understand. The secret of happiness is greatly desired, but equally great is the lack of happiness. Most of the poor covet wealth, believing that its possession will bring them supreme and true happiness. Many of the rich, after satisfying all their desires and whims, suffer from weariness and satiety, and are farther from possessing happiness than even those who are very poor. If we reflect on this state of affairs, we will eventually come to know a very important truth. Happiness does not stem from external possessions, nor does misery from their absence. For if it was so, The poor would always be miserable and the rich always happy. But it is often otherwise. Some of the most miserable people I have met were those surrounded by wealth and luxury, while some of the brightest and happiest people I have known possessed only the most basic needs of life. Many men who have amassed wealth have confessed that the selfish gratification that followed the acquisition of wealth stole the sweetness from their lives, and they were never as happy as when they were poor. What then is happiness, and how can it be attained? It is an invention, a deception, and only suffering is eternal. After observing and seriously reflecting, we will find that all except those who have trodden the path of wisdom believe that happiness can only be obtained through the satisfaction of desire. This belief, rooted in the soil of ignorance and constantly nourished by selfish whims, is the cause of all the miseries of the world. And I do not use the word desire only to refer to the grossest animal appetites, for it extends to the higher psychic realm where much more powerful, subtle and insidious desires keep intellectuals and refined individuals in bondage, depriving them of all that beauty, harmony and purity of soul, whose expression is happiness. Most people admit that selfishness is the cause of all unhappiness in the world, but fall into the destructive illusion of the soul that this refers to the selfishness of others and not their own. When you are ready to admit that all your unhappiness is the result of your own selfishness, you will not be far from the gates of heaven. But as long as you are convinced that it is the selfishness of others stealing your joy, you will remain a prisoner of the purgatory you yourself have created. Happiness is that inner state of perfect satisfaction, which is joy and peace, where every desire is eliminated. The satisfaction that comes from fulfilled desire is brief and illusory, and is always followed by increased demand for satisfaction. Desire is as insatiable as the ocean, and demands louder and louder as its demands are met. It demands greater and greater service from its deceived devotees until they are finally struck with physical or mental anguish and thrown into the purifying fires of feeling. Desire is the religion of hell, and all torments converge there. Abandoning desire is the realization of heaven, and all delights await the pilgrim there. I sent my soul through the invisible to find some letters of this future life. After a while, my soul returned to me and whispered, "I am myself heaven and hell. Heaven and hell are internal states. If you immerse yourself in the ego and all its satisfactions, you plunge into hell. If you rise above the ego to that state of consciousness, which is the complete denial and forgetting of the self, you enter heaven. The ego is blind, lacking discernment, devoid of true knowledge, and always leads to suffering. Correct perception, impartial judgment, and true knowledge belong only to the divine state, and it is to the extent that you realize this divine consciousness that you will know what true happiness is. As long as you persist in the selfish pursuit of your personal happiness, happiness will flee from you, and you will sow the seeds of misery. To the extent that you lose yourself in serving others, you will receive happiness and reap a harvest of bliss. It is in loving, not in being loved, that the heart is blessed. It is in giving, not in seeking gifts, that we find our quest. Whatever your desire or need, if you give, your soul will be nourished, and you will truly live. If you cling to the ego, you will cling to sadness. If you renounce the ego, you will enter into peace. Selfish pursuit is not only the loss of happiness, but also of everything we think is the source of happiness. Look how the glutton continually seeks a new dish to stimulate his dull appetite, and how, bloated, overwhelmed, and sick, he scarcely eats finally with pleasure. While the one who has mastered his appetite not only seeks, but does not even think about gustatory pleasure. He finds pleasure in the simplest food, the angelic form of happiness that men, looking through the eyes of the ego, imagine to see in fulfilled desire. When they embrace it, they always find it to be the skeleton of misery. Truly, whoever seeks to save his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life will find it. Lasting happiness will come to you when, ceasing to cling selfishly, you are willing to renounce, when you are ready to wholeheartedly lose that thing which is so dear to you and to which you cling. What you cling to one day will be torn from you, and then you will discover that what seemed to you a painful loss turns out to be a supreme gain. Giving up to gain, there is no greater lie or more prolific source of misery. But being willing to yield and undergo losses, is this truly the way of life? How can one find true happiness by focusing on those things which, by their very nature, must pass away? Real and lasting happiness can only be found by focusing on what is permanent. So rise above attachment and desire for impermanent things, then you will enter into an awareness of the eternal. And as you ascend above the ego, growing increasingly in the spirit of purity, self-sacrifice, and universal love, focusing on this consciousness, you will realize that happiness which has no reaction and can never be taken from you. The heart that has achieved total self-forgetfulness in its love for others has not only attained the highest happiness, but has entered into immortality, for it has realized the divine. If you look back on your life, you will find that the moments of greatest felicity were those when you uttered a word or performed an act of compassion or selfless love, for spiritually, happiness and harmony are synonymous. Harmony is a phase of the great law whose spiritual expression is love. All selfishness is discordance, and to be selfish is not to be in harmony with the divine order. By realizing this omnipresent love, which is the negation of the self, we enter into harmony with the divine music, the universal chant. And that ineffable melody, which is true happiness, becomes ours. Men and women rush from side to side in blind search of happiness and cannot find it, nor will they ever find it, until they recognize that happiness is already within them and around them, filling the universe, and that they were selfishly pursuing happiness to be theirs. I pursued it over tall oaks and ivies, through hills and valleys, fields and meadows, in the purple valley, swiftly pursued by the stream, climbing dizzy cliffs where eagles cry. I swiftly crossed all lands and seas, but happiness always exhausted me, made me faint. I pursued it no further, but sank down to rest on a barren shore. A man came asking for food, and another for alms. I placed bread and gold in their bony palms. One came seeking compassion and the other rest. I shared with each needy person the best of myself. When gentle felicity, clothed in divine form, stopped beside me, whispering softly, "I am yours." These beautiful lines express the secret to all abundant happiness. Sacrifice the personal and temporary, and you will immediately rise towards the impersonal and permanent. Abandon this narrow and constrained self that wants everything to submit to its petty interests, and you will enter into the company of angels, into the very heart and essence of universal love. Completely forget the pains of others and the attention paid to others. Thus, divine happiness will free you from all pain and suffering. By taking the first step with a good thought, the second with a good word, and the third with a good deed, I entered paradise, and you too can enter paradise by following the same path. It is not in the hereafter, it is here and can only be realized by the selfless. Only the pure of heart fully know it. If you have not realized this unlimited happiness, you can begin to manifest it by always keeping before you the lofty ideal of selfless love and aspiring to it. Aspiration or prayer is desire turned upwards. It is the soul turning towards its divine source, where only permanent satisfaction can be found. Through aspiration, the destructive forces of desire transmute into divine and omnipresent energy. Aspiration is striving to free oneself from the fetters of desire. It is the wonder made wise through solitude and suffering, returning to the abode of its Father. As you rise above this sordid self, breaking chain after chain, you will realize that the joy of giving, unlike the misery of clinging, giving of your substance, your intellect, your love, and the growing light within you, will make you understand that indeed it is more blessed to give than to receive. But the giving must be from the heart, without any stain of the self, without desire for reward. The gift of pure love is always accompanied by happiness. Yes, after giving, if you feel hurt because you are not thanked, not flattered, or your name is not mentioned in the newspaper, then you must know that your gift was motivated by vanity and not by love, and that you were simply giving to get. So you were not really giving but taking. Lose yourself in the well-being of others, forget yourself, and in all that you do, therein lies the secret of abundant happiness. Always strive to avoid selfishness and faithfully learn the divine lessons of inner sacrifice. Thus, you will ascend to the highest peaks of happiness and remain under the never-darkened sun of universal joy, clothed in the brilliant robe of immortality. Seek happiness that does not fade. Search for joy that lives and leaves no painful days. You suffocate in the currents of love, life, and peace. So let all dark desires step aside and let selfish search cease. You find yourself on paths of pain, tormented by sorrow, struck by suffering, walking on roads that further bruise your weary feet, longing for the place where tears and sorrows cease. So sacrifice your selfish heart and find the heart of peace. The realization of prosperity is granted only to the heart that abounds in integrity, trust, generosity, and love. For the achievement of true prosperity, love that does not possess these qualities cannot know prosperity, because prosperity, like happiness, is not an external possession, but an internal realization. The greedy man may become a millionaire, but will always be miserable, petty, and poor, and even consider himself outwardly poor as long as there is a man richer than him in the world, whereas the upright, generous, and loving will achieve complete and rich prosperity. Even if his external possessions are modest, he is poor who is dissatisfied. He is rich who is content with what he has, and he is even richer who is generous with what he has. When we contemplate the fact that the universe is overflowing with all good things, both material and spiritual, and compare it to man's blind desire for a few pieces of gold or a few acres of land, it is then that we realize how dark and ignorant selfishness is. It is then that we know that self-seeking is self-destruction. Nature gives everything without reserve and loses nothing. Man, in wanting to grasp everything, loses everything. If you want to achieve true prosperity, do not settle into the belief, as many have, that if you do what is right, everything will go wrong. Do not let the word competition shake your faith in the supremacy of justice. I care not what men say about the laws of competition, for I know the unchanging law that will one day drive them away, and is even now driving them away from the heart and life of the just man. Knowing this law, I cannot contemplate all dishonesty with undisturbed rest, for I know where certain destruction awaits it. In all circumstances, do what you believe is right and trust in the law. Trust in the divine power that is immanent in the universe and will never abandon you. So you will always be protected by trust. All your losses will turn into gains, and all threatening curses will transmute into blessings. Never leave aside integrity, generosity, and love, for united with energy, they will lift you to the state of true prosperity. Do not believe the world when it tells you that you must always put yourself first and others second. Acting thus is not thinking at all about others, but only about your own conveniences. Those who practice this will someday know abandonment by all. When they cry out in their loneliness and anguish, there will be no one to listen or help them. To consider oneself first before all others is to reduce, distort, and hinder all noble and divine impulse. Let your soul expand. Let your heart open to others with warmth, love, and generosity, for thus great and enduring will be your joy, and all prosperity will come to you. Those who have turned away from the path of righteousness guard against competition. Those who always pursue righteousness need not worry about defense. This is not an empty assertion. There are men today who, by the power of integrity and faith, have defied all competition and, without deviating in the least from their methods when in competition, have consistently climbed towards prosperity, while those who tried to destabilize them have been defeated. Possessing these internal qualities that constitute goodness is to be protected against all powers of evil and doubly protected at all times of trial. To build oneself in these qualities is to build a success that cannot be shaken, and to enter into a prosperity that will last forever. The white tunic of the invisible heart is soiled with sin and pain, affliction and sorrow. All basins of repentance and prayer will not wash it anew. As long as the stains of error burn on the path of ignorance, they will continue to cling. The impurities mark the twisted path of the self, where anguish lurks and disappointments sting. Knowledge and wisdom can only serve to purify and clean my attire, for there lie the waters of love. There lies the undisturbed, eternal, serene peace. Sin and repentance are the path of pain, knowledge and wisdom are the path of peace. Through the narrow path of practice, I will find where beatitude begins, how pains and sorrows cease. The self will depart and truth will take its place. The immutable, the indivisible, will find its refuge in me and cleanse the white tunic of the invisible heart. The path of peace, the power of meditation. Spiritual meditation is the path to divinity. It is the mystical ladder that ascends from earth to heaven, from error to truth, from pain to peace. All saints have climbed it. Every sinner must reach it sooner or later, and every weary pilgrim, turning away from self and the world, steadfastly fixing his face towards the Father's abode, must set his feet upon its golden steps. Without it you cannot rise to the divine state or attain divine likeness or peace. The eternal glories and pure joys of truth will remain hidden from you. Meditation is the persistent intensity in reflecting upon an idea or subject with the aim of fully understanding it. Not only will you eventually comprehend everything on which you constantly meditate, but you will grow more and more into its likeness, for it will incorporate itself into your own being. It will indeed become a part of you. Therefore, if you constantly meditate on something selfish and debasing, you will eventually become selfish and debasing. If you think upon something pure and selfless, you will surely become pure and selfless. Tell me what you most frequently and intensely think about, towards what your soul naturally turns in moments of silence, and I will tell you towards what place of pain or peace you are journeying. Whether you are drawing nearer to the divine or the bestial, there is an inevitable tendency to literally become the embodiment of the quality most often thought about. Therefore, let the object of your meditation be higher and not lower, so that every time you address it your thought ascends. Let it be pure and not mixed with any selfish element. Thus your heart will purify itself and draw nearer to truth. It will not become contaminated and be hopelessly led into error. Meditation, in the spiritual sense I am now using, is the secret of all spiritual growth in life and knowledge. Every wise prophet and savior has reached this level through the power of meditation. Buddha meditated on truth until he could say, "I am the truth." Jesus meditated on divine immanence until he could finally declare, "I and my Father are one." Meditation centered on divine reality is the stage and soul of prayer. It is the soul's silent approach to the eternal. Simple petitionary prayer without meditation is a body without a soul. It is useless for lifting the spirit and heart above sin and pain. If you pray daily for wisdom, for peace, for higher purity and fuller realization of truth, and yet that for which you pray remains far from you, it means you pray for one thing while living in thought and action for another. If you cease acting thus, turning your mind away from all to which you selfishly cling and which prevents you from possessing the infinite realities for which you pray, if you no longer ask God to give you what you do not deserve or to grant you that love and compassion which you are not capable of offering to others, but instead begin to think and act in the spirit of truth day by day, you will grow into these realities. Eventually you will join them. He who would gain an earthly advantage must be ready to work energetically to obtain it, and it would indeed be foolish to believe it will come simply by asking. Therefore, do not believe you can obtain heavenly possessions without effort. Only when you seriously begin to work in the kingdom of truth will you be allowed to labor for the bread of life. And when, through patient and untiring effort, you have earned the spiritual wage you seek, it will not be withheld from you. If you truly seek truth and not merely your own gain, if you love it more than all pleasures and superficial gains, even more than happiness itself, then you will be ready to make the necessary effort to attain it. If you wish to be free from sin and pain, if you wish to taste that immaculate purity for which you long and pray, if you wish to attain wisdom and knowledge, and enter into possession of deep and lasting peace, come now and enter the path of meditation, and let its supreme aim be truth. First of all, meditation must be distinguished from daydreaming. There is nothing dreamy or lacking in practice about it. It is a process of uncompromising inquiry and reflection that leaves nothing but simple, naked truth. In meditating, you will no longer content yourself with staying within your prejudices. By forgetting yourself, you will only remember that you seek truth. Thus, You will eliminate one by one the errors you have built around yourself in the past, and you will patiently await the revelation of truth, which will come when your errors have been sufficiently eliminated. In the silent humility of your heart, you will realize that there is an inner center within each of us where truth resides in fullness, and all around, wall upon wall, the ordinary face imprisons it. This clear and perfect perception, which is truth, is blinded by a confusing and perverse fleshly envelope, causing everything to be error. To know instead consists of opening a path through which the imprisoned splendor can escape rather than bringing in a light supposed to be outside. Choose a time of day to meditate and dedicate this sacred period to your goal. The best time is early in the morning, when the spirit of rest pervades everything. Natural conditions will be in your favor. Passions resulting from the long bodily fasting of the night will be subdued. Excitements and concerns of the previous day will have vanished, and the mind, strong yet rested, will be ready to receive spiritual instruction. Indeed, one of the first efforts you will have to make will be to rid yourself of weariness and indifference. If you refuse, you cannot progress, for the demands of the spirit are imperative. To be spiritually awake is equivalent to being mentally and physically awake. The lazy and self-indulgent cannot have knowledge of truth. He who, having health and strength, wastes the precious quiet and tranquil hours of the morning in drowsy passivity is utterly incapable of rising to heavenly heights. On the other hand, one with an awakened conscience who has recognized his lofty possibilities and begun to shake off the darkness of ignorance in which the world has enveloped him, rises before the stars have ceased their watch. Struggling against the darkness within himself, he contends to breathe in holy inspiration in order to receive the light of truth. While the world continues to sleep, the summits reached and maintained by great men were not achieved through sudden inspiration, but while their peers slept, they strove to climb. No holy man, sacred creature, or master of truth has ever lived who did not rise early in the morning. Jesus usually woke early and went into solitary mountains to devote himself to Holy Communion. Buddha always arose an hour before dawn to meditate, and all his disciples were ordained to do the same. If you must start your daily duties very early in the morning and are required to engage in systematic meditation at dawn, try to do it for an hour in the evening. And if even that is difficult due to the extent and laboriousness of your daily work, you need not awaken, for you can direct your thoughts upward in holy meditation during breaks in your work, or during those few aimless minutes of idleness that you now waste. And if your work becomes automatic through practice, you can meditate while you are busy. The famous Christian saint and philosopher Jakob Böhme acquired his vast knowledge of divine things while working long hours as a shoemaker. There is always time for reflection, even for the busiest or most laborious. Aspiration and meditation are not mutually exclusive. Spiritual meditation and self-discipline are inseparable. Therefore, you will begin to meditate upon yourself to try to understand yourself. For remember, the great goal before you will be the complete elimination of all your errors so that you may attain truth. You will begin to question your motivations, thoughts, and actions, comparing them to your ideal and trying to observe them with a calm and impartial gaze. In this way, you will constantly gain more of that mental and spiritual balance without which men are but helpless straws in the ocean of life. If you have an inclination towards hate or anger, meditate on kindness and forgiveness in such a way as to become aware of your harsh and senseless behavior. Then you will begin to have thoughts of love, kindness, and abundant forgiveness. And as you overcome the lower by the higher, gradually and silently, a knowledge of the divine law of love will enter into your heart, understanding its relation to all aspects of life and behavior. By applying this knowledge to each of your thoughts, words, and actions, you will become more and more gentle, loving, and divine, and thus you will overcome every error, every selfish desire, every human weakness through the power of meditation. And as each sin and error is expelled, the light of truth will shine more fully and clearly upon the pilgrim soul. By meditating in this way, you will continually strengthen yourself against your only true enemy, your selfish and ephemeral self, and you will root yourself more firmly in the divine and eternal self, which is inseparable from truth. The direct result of your meditations will be a calm and spiritual strength that will be your refuge in the struggle of life. The power to overcome through holy thought and the strength and knowledge gained in the hour of silent meditation will enrich the soul with a saving memory in the hour of struggle, pain, or temptation. As through the power of meditation you grow in wisdom, you will more frequently renounce your selfish desires, which are unstable, temporary, and bring sadness and pain. You will firmly take your stand on unalterable principles and attain heavenly rest. The use of meditation is the acquisition of knowledge of eternal principles, and the power resulting from it is the ability to rest in these principles and have confidence in them. And thus, you will join eternity. The end of meditation is therefore the direct knowledge of God's truth and the realization of deep divine peace. Allow your meditations to flow from the ethical principles you now have. Remember that you must grow in truth through constant perseverance. If you are an Orthodox Christian, meditate ceaselessly on the immaculate purity and divine excellence of the character of Jesus, and apply all his precepts to your inner life and outward conduct to approach closer and closer to his perfection. Do not be like those religious people who, refusing to meditate on the law of truth and to practice the commandments given by their master, content themselves with formal worship, cling to their particular beliefs and continue to circle around in the cycle of sin and suffering. Strive to elevate yourself, using the power of meditation, above all selfish attachment to partial gods or partisan creeds, beyond dead formalities and lifeless ignorance, walking on the high path of wisdom, the mind focused on immaculate truth. You will know no stopping point other than the realization of truth. He who meditates seriously perceives a truth, so to speak, far off, then realizes it through daily practice. Only he who practices the word of truth can know the doctrine of truth. For although truth is perceived by pure thought, it is actualized only through its practice. Thus said the divine Gautama the Buddha, "He who indulges in vanity and not in meditation, forgetting the true purpose of life and attaching himself to pleasure, will eventually envy one who has applied himself to meditation." He instructed his disciples in the following 5 great meditations. The first is the meditation of love, where you adjust your heart to desire the well-being of all beings, including the happiness of your enemies. The second is the meditation of compassion, where you think of all beings in pain, vividly representing in your mind their sufferings to awaken deep compassion in your soul. The third is the meditation of joy, where you think of others' prosperity and rejoice in their happiness. The fourth is the meditation of impurity, where you consider the bad consequences of corruption, the effects of sin, and the often superficial diseases of momentary pleasures leading to fatal consequences. The fifth is the meditation of serenity, where you rise above love and hate, tyranny and oppression, wealth and need, and consider your own fate with impartial calm and perfect tranquility. Through these meditations, the disciples of Buddha attain knowledge of the truth. But what matters whether you dedicate yourself to these specific meditations or not, as long as your goal is truth? As long as you have that hunger and thirst for righteousness that makes a holy heart and an irreproachable life, in your meditations, therefore, let your heart grow and expand with an ever-widening love, until freed from all hatred, passion, and condemnation, it embraces the entire universe with wise tenderness, just as the flower opens its petals to receive the morning light. Open your soul to the glorious light of truth, raise the wings of aspiration. Do not be afraid and believe in the highest possibilities. Believe in the possibility of a life of total submission, immaculate purity, perfect holiness in the realization of the highest truth. He who believes thus ascends swiftly to the celestial hills, while the unbelievers continue to wander obscurely and painfully in mist-shrouded valleys. Believing, desiring, and meditating thus, you will make your spiritually sweet and loving experiences, and the revelations that will beautify your inner vision will be glorious. As you realize divine love, divine justice, divine purity, the perfect law of the great God, your joy will be great and your peace deep. The old things will pass away and everything will be renewed. The veil of the material universe, so dense and impenetrable to the eye of error, so fine and diffuse to the eye of truth, will be lifted, and the spiritual universe will be revealed. Time will cease, and you will live only in eternity. Change and mortality will no longer cause anxiety and sadness, for you will have established yourself in the eternal and dwell at the very heart of immortality. Star of wisdom, star of the birth of Vishnu, of the birth of Krishna, of Buddha, of Jesus, told to the wise who gaze at the sky waiting, watching over your brilliance in the darkness of night, in the starless twilight of midnight, shining herald of the arrival of the kingdom of the righteous, narrator of the mystical tale of the humble birth of divinity, in the stable of passions, in the manger of the spirit, silent singer of the secret of deep and holy compassion for the heart laden with pain, for the soul weary of waiting, star of unmatched brilliance, you renew the night. You rejoice anew the wise who observe in the darkness of tired creeds, of endless battle with the crushing blades of error, tired of lifeless idols, useless forms of dead religions, tired of waiting for your brilliance. You have ended their despair, you have illuminated their path, you have brought back the ancient truths into the hearts of all your watchers, into the souls of those who love you. You speak of joy and happiness, of peace that comes from pain. Blessed are those who can see you, O weary travelers of the night. Blessed are those who feel the quiver in their chest, feel the beats of a deep love stirred in them by the great power of your splendor. Let us truly learn your lesson. Let us learn it faithfully with humility, learn it gently, wisely, with an ancient joy, star of the holy Vishnu, light of Krishna, Buddha, Jesus, the two masters, the self and the truth. On the battlefield of the human soul, there are two masters who always struggle for the crown of supremacy, of reign and domination of the heart. The master of the self, also called the prince of this world, and the master of truth, called Father God. The master of the self is that rebel whose weapons are passion, pride, greed, vanity, self-will, and the instruments of darkness. The master of truth is the one gentle and humble, whose weapons are gentleness, patience, purity, sacrifice, humanity, love, and the instruments of light. In every soul unfolds the battle, and just as a soldier cannot serve in two opposing armies at once, so every heart is enlisted in the ranks of the self or of truth. There is no compromise. There is the self, and there is truth. Where the self is, truth is not, and where truth is, the self is not, said Buddha, the master of truth. And Jesus, the manifested Christ, declared that no man can serve two masters, for he will hate one and love the other, or he will cling to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and truth. It is as simple, absolutely immutable, and inflexible. It admits no complexity, no change or qualification. The self is ingenious, unstable, governed by subtle and variable desire. It admits an infinity of changes and qualifications. The worshippers of the self, deceived, vainly imagine they can satisfy all earthly desires while possessing truth. But lovers of truth adore it to the detriment of the self, tirelessly guarding against superficiality and selfishness. If you seek to know and realize truth, then you must be prepared for sacrifice, to renounce everything, for truth in all its glory can only be seen and known when the presence of the self has completely disappeared. The eternal Christ declared that whoever wants to be his disciple must deny himself daily. Are you ready to deny yourself, to abandon your desires, prejudices, opinions? If yes, you can enter the narrow path of truth and find that peace which the world excludes. Absolute denial, total extinction of the self, is the perfect state of truth, and all religions and philosophies are nothing more than aids to achieve this supreme goal. The self is the negation of truth. Truth is the negation of the self. As long as you cling to it, your path will be strewn with difficulties, multiple pains, sorrows, and disappointments. But there are no difficulties in truth. Once you arrive at it, you will be liberated from all pain and disappointment. Truth in itself is neither hidden nor obscure. It always reveals itself and is perfectly transparent, but the blind and lost self cannot notice it. Its daylight is hidden only to the blind, and the light of truth is not hidden except to those blinded by the self. Truth is the only reality in the universe. inner harmony, perfect justice, eternal love. Nothing can be added or subtracted from it. It depends on no man, but all men depend on it. You cannot perceive the beauty of truth as long as you look at it through the eyes of the self. If you are vain, you will paint everything with your own vanities. If you are lustful, your heart and mind will be so clouded by the smoke and flames of passion that everything will seem distorted through them. If you are proud and stubborn, you will see nothing in the entire universe except the greatness and importance of your own opinions. There is one quality that chiefly distinguishes the man of truth from the man of the self, and that is humility. Being free not only from vanity, stubbornness and selfishness, but also considering one's own opinions worthless. This is truly true humility. He who is immersed in the self considers his own opinions as truth and those of other men as error. But this humble lover of truth, who has learned to distinguish it from opinion, looks upon all men with charitable eyes, and does not seek to defend his opinions against theirs, but sacrifices his reflections in order to love more, in order to manifest the spirit of truth, for it is in its own unique nature, and can only be possessed by one who has more charity, has more truth. Men engage in heated controversies and foolishly imagine they are defending truth, when in reality they are only defending their own petty interests and passing opinions. The follower of the self rises up in arms against others. The follower of truth rises up against himself. Truth, unalterable and eternal, is independent of your opinion or mine. We can enter it or remain outside, but our defense and attack are both superficial and turn against ourselves. Men enslaved by the self, passionate, proud and condemning, believe that their personal religion is truth and that all other beliefs are error. They propagate it with passionate zeal. There is only one religion, the religion of truth. There is only one error, the error of the self. Truth is not a formal belief. It is a selfless, holy, and aspiring heart. And he who has truth is at peace with all and cherishes all with thoughts of love. Blessed are those who can see you, O weary travelers of the night. Blessed are those who feel the trembling in their chests, sense the beats of a deep love stirred within them by the great power of your splendor. Let us truly learn your lesson. Let us learn it faithfully with humility, learn it gently, wisely, with an ancient joy, star of the holy Vishnu, light of Krishna, Buddha, Jesus, the two masters, the self and the truth. On the battlefield of the human soul there are two masters who always struggle for the crown of supremacy in the realm and domination of the heart. The master of the self, also called the prince of this world, and the master of truth called the Father God. The master of the self is that rebel whose weapons are passion, pride, greed, vanity, self-will, and instruments of darkness. The master of truth is the one gentle and humble, whose weapons are gentleness, patience, purity, sacrifice, humanity, love, and instruments of light. In every soul unfolds the battle, and just as a soldier cannot serve in two opposing armies at once, so every heart is enlisted in the ranks of the self or of truth. There is no compromise. There is the self, and there is truth. Where the self is, truth is not, and where truth is, the self is not, said Buddha, the master of truth. And Jesus, the manifested Christ, declared that no man can serve two masters, for he will hate one and love the other, or he will cling to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and truth. It is as simple, absolutely immutable and inflexible. It admits no complexity, no change or qualification. The self is ingenious, unstable, governed by subtle and variable desire. It admits an infinity of changes and qualifications. The worshippers of the self, deceived, vainly imagine they can satisfy all earthly desires while possessing truth. But lovers of truth adore it to the detriment of the self, tirelessly guarding against superficiality and selfishness. If you seek to know and realize truth, then you must be prepared for sacrifice, to renounce everything, for truth in all its glory can only be seen and known when the presence of the self has completely disappeared. The eternal Christ declared that whoever wants to be his disciple must deny himself daily. Are you ready to deny yourself, to abandon your desires, prejudices, opinions? If yes, you can enter the narrow path of truth and find that peace which the world excludes. Absolute denial, total extinction of the self is the perfect state of truth, and all religions and philosophies are nothing more than aids to achieve this supreme goal. The self is the negation of truth. Truth is the negation of the self. As long as you cling to it, your path will be strewn with difficulties, multiple pains, sorrows, and disappointments. But there are no difficulties in truth. Once you arrive at it, you will be liberated from all pain and disappointment. Truth in itself is neither hidden nor obscure. It always reveals itself and is perfectly transparent, but the blind and lost self cannot notice it. Its daylight is hidden only to the blind, and the light of truth is not hidden except to those blinded by the self. Truth is the only reality in the universe, inner harmony, perfect justice, eternal love. Nothing can be added or subtracted from it. It depends on no man, but all men depend on it. You cannot perceive the beauty of truth as long as you look at it through the eyes of the self. If you are vain, you will paint everything with your own vanities. If you are lustful, your heart and mind will be so clouded by the smoke and flames of passion that everything will seem distorted through them. If you are proud and stubborn, you will see nothing in the entire universe except the greatness and importance of your own opinions. There is one quality that chiefly distinguishes the man of truth from the man of the self, and that is humility. Being free not only from vanity, stubbornness and selfishness, but also considering one's own opinions as worthless. This is truly true humility. He who is immersed in the self considers his own opinions as truth and those of other men as error. But this humble lover of truth, who has learned to distinguish it from opinion, looks upon all men with charitable eyes, and does not seek to defend his opinions against theirs, but sacrifices his reflections in order to love more, in order to manifest the spirit of truth. For it is in its own unique nature, and can only be possessed by one who has more charity, has more truth. Men engage in heated controversies and foolishly imagine they defend truth when in reality they defend only their petty self-interests and passing opinions. The follower of the self rises in arms against others. The follower of truth rises against himself. Truth, unalterable and eternal, is independent of your opinion or mine. We may enter into it or remain outside, but both our defense and attack are superficial and turn back against ourselves. Men enslaved by the self, passionate, proud, and condemning, believe their personal religion is the truth, and all other beliefs are errors. They propagate it fervently. There is only one religion, the religion of truth. There is only one error, the error of the self. Truth is not a formal belief. It is a selfless, holy, aspiring heart. And he who has truth is at peace with all and appreciates all with thoughts of love. If you silently examine your mind, heart, and conduct, you can easily know whether you are a child of truth or a worshipper of the self. Do you have thoughts of suspicion, hostility, jealousy, lust, or pride? Or do they energetically contend within you? If the former, you are bound to the self, no matter the religion you defend. If the latter, you are a candidate for truth. Even if you practice no religion, are you passionate, stubborn? Do you always seek to achieve your own goals? Are you self-centered or gentle, kind, selfless? Do you renounce all forms of personal indulgence and are always ready to give up what is yours? If the former, the self is your master. If the latter, truth receives your affection. Do you strive for wealth, passionately fight for your party, desire power and leadership, tend toward ostentation and self-praise, or have you renounced love of wealth, all struggle? Are you content with taking the lowest place and passing unnoticed? Have you stopped talking about yourself and ceased self-complacent pride? If the former, even if you imagine adoring God, the God of your heart is the self. If the latter, even if you withhold adoration on your lips, you dwell with the Most High. The signs by which one recognizes the lover of truth are indisputable. Listen to the holy Krishna declare them in the beautiful interpretation of Sir Edwin Arnold. Courage, soul solitude, the will to always strive for wisdom. Open hand and mastered appetites, piety and love for solitary study, humility, righteousness, concern not to harm any living creature, truthfulness, slow to anger, a spirit that lightly lets pass what others prize, equanimity and charity that spies not the faults of men, tenderness toward all who suffer, a content heart, undisturbed by desires, gentle, modest, serious demeanor, with a nobly mixed virility of patience, strength and purity, a non-vindictive spirit never inclined to overestimate oneself. Such are the marks, O Indian prince, of him whose feet are set on that fair path leading to heavenly birth. When men, lost in the rocky paths of error and self, forget the heavenly birth, the state of holiness and truth, they then establish artificial standards to judge each other. They make acceptance and adherence to their own particular theology proof of truth. Thus men divide against each other, breeding ceaseless hostility and strife, endless pain and suffering. Listen, to realize birth in truth there is only one path. Let the self die. Let go of all those passions, appetites, desires, opinions, limited conceptions and prejudices to which you have tenaciously clung until now. Do not allow them to keep you further in bondage, and truth shall be yours. Cease to regard your own religion as superior to all others, and humbly strive to learn the supreme lesson of charity. Defend no longer the provocative idea of struggles and pains, that the Savior you adore is the only Savior, and that one whom your brother adores with equal sincerity and fervor is an impostor. Carefully seek the path of holiness, and then you shall realize that every holy man is a Savior of humanity. Renunciation of the self is not merely forgetting external things. It is renouncing inner sin and error. Truth is not found by abandoning futile garments or riches, abstaining from certain foods, or speaking gentle words. It is found by renouncing the spirit of vanity, the desire for wealth, abstaining from lust and self-satisfaction, renouncing all hatred, conflict, condemnation, self-seeking, and becoming gentle and pure of heart. By doing these things, one finds truth. To do the first and not the second is disloyalty and hypocrisy, for the second already includes the first. You may renounce the external world and isolate yourself in a cave or deep in a forest, but you will carry with you all your selfishness. And unless you renounce it, your distress will be great and your illusion deep. You can remain right where you are, fulfilling all your duties, and yet renounce the world. The inner enemy is in the world and yet does not belong to it. This is the highest perfection, the most blessed peace, the greatest victory. Renunciation of the self is the path of truth. There is no pain like hatred, no evil like passion, no lie like the senses. Enter this path. He who steps over an offense with love begins to see things in their proper relationship. He who is carried away by any passion, prejudice, liking or disliking inclines all this personal bias and sees only his own deceptions. He who is absolutely free from all passion, prejudice, preference and bias sees himself as he is, appreciates others as they are, observes all things according to their proper propositions and in correct relation, having nothing to attack, nothing to defend, nothing to conceal, and no interest to protect. He is at peace. He has attained the deep simplicity of virtue, because the impartial, tranquil, and blessed state of mind and heart is the state of truth. He who attains it dwells with the angels and feels the foot of the Supreme. By understanding the great law, the origin of pain, the secret of suffering, and the path of emancipation of truth, how can one engage in struggle or condemnation? For even if he knows that the world is blind and selfish, that it is enveloped in the clouds of its own illusions and plunged into the darkness of error and self, and cannot feel the firm light of truth or understand the deep simplicity of the heart that has perished, he also knows that when the ages of suffering have accumulated mountains of pain, the soul of the world, crushed and overwhelmed, will fly to its final refuge, and when the ages are completed, every prodigal son will return to the refuge of truth. Thus, he lives in kindness towards all, and looks upon them with the tender compassion that a father gives to his lost children. Men cannot understand truth because they cling to the self, because they believe in it and love it. They believe it is the only reality when, in fact, it is the only deception. When you cease to believe in the self and love it, it will abandon you and you will fly to truth. Thus you will find eternal reality. When men get drunk on the luxurious wines of pleasure and vanity, the thirst for life grows and deepens in them. They deceive themselves with dreams of carnal immortality. But when the time comes to reap what they have sown and pain and suffering occur, then crushed and humiliated, abandoning the self and all its intoxications, they arrive with a sorrowful heart at the only immortality, the immortality that destroys all illusions, spiritual immortality in truth. Men pass from evil to good, from the self to truth, through the dark gate of pain, for pain and the self are inseparable. Only in the peace and bliss of truth is all pain conquered. If you suffer from disappointment because your desired plans are thwarted, or because someone did not meet your expectations, it is because you cling to the self. If you have remorse for your conduct, it is because you yielded to the self. If you feel overwhelmed by disgust and regret because of someone's attitude towards you, it is because you have indulged the self. If you are hurt by what is said or done about you, it is because you walk the painful path of the self. All suffering is the self. All pain finds its end in truth. When you enter into it and realize it, you will no longer suffer from disappointments, remorse, and lamentations, and torment will flee from you. The self is the only prison that can bind the soul. Truth is the only angel that can command the opening of doors, and when its call comes, rise up and quickly follow its path through the darkness, for in the end it leads to the light. The pain of the world comes from its own harvest. Pain purifies and deepens the soul, and extreme suffering is the beginning of truth. You have suffered greatly. You have been deeply afflicted. You have seriously pondered the problem of life. If so, you are ready to wage war against the self and become a disciple of truth. Intellectuals do not see the need to renounce the self. They elaborate endless theories about the universe and call them truth. But you follow the straight line of conduct, which is the practice of righteousness, and you will understand that truth has no place in theory and never changes. Cultivate your heart, continually water it with selfless love and deep piety, and strive to remove all thoughts and feelings that are not in accord with love. Repay good for evil, love for hate, gentleness for mistreatment, and remain silent when attacked. Thus, you will transform all your selfish desires into pure gold of love, and the self will disappear into truth. Thus you will walk blamelessly, united by the light bond of humility and clothed in its divine attire. Come, weary brother, your struggle and effort find their end in the heart of the Master of Truth, through the dark desert of the self, for you conduct yourself thirsty for the life-giving waters of truth. When here on the path of your search and sin flows the joyful stream of life, there lies the green oasis of love. Come, return and rest, know the end and the beginning, the sought and the seeker, the seer and the seen. Your Master does not sit on inaccessible mountains. He does not dwell in the mirage floating in the air. He will not discover his magical sources in sand paths surrounding desolation. In despair, in the dark desert of selfishness, cease tiredly seeking the fragrant traces of your King's feet, and if you wish to hear the sweet sound of his voice, become deaf to all voices singing vain melodies to you. Flee transient places, renounce all you have, abandon all you love, and naked, come to the sanctuary of inner division. The highest, the holiest, the immutable is within, in the heart of silence. He dwells there. Leave pain and sin, leave your painful wanderings, come bathe in his joy. So cease, weary brother, your struggle and effort find peace in the heart of the Master of Truth through the dark desert of the self. Cease laboring, come, drink from the beautiful waters of truth. The acquisition of spiritual power. The world is filled with men and women who seek pleasure, excitement, and novelty, who seek to conduct themselves toward laughter or tears, who do not desire strength, stability, and power, but prefer weakness and strive to dissipate the power they possess. Because few are willing to make the necessary sacrifice to acquire power, and even fewer are those willing to patiently forge character, being carried away by their unstable thoughts and impulses, is to be weak and useless. Controlling and directing these forces correctly is to be strong and powerful. Men with energetic animal passions have much of the fierceness of beasts, but that is not power. The elements are present, but only when that fierceness is tamed and subdued by a higher intelligence does true power begin. Men can only grow in power by accessing states of consciousness and intelligence that are increasingly higher. The difference between a man of weakness and a man of power lies not in the strength of his personal will, for the obstinate man is often weak and foolish, but in the focus of consciousness that presents his states of knowledge. Seekers of pleasure, lovers of excitement, hunters of novelty, and victims of impulses and hysterical emotions lack knowledge of the principles that provide balance, stability, and influence. A man begins to develop power when he controls his selfish impulses and inclinations, relying on the highest and calmest science within him, and begins to stabilize in his principles. Realizing the unchanging principles in consciousness is at the same time the source and secret of the highest power. After much search, suffering, and sacrifice, when the light of an eternal principle shines in the soul, a divine tranquility occurs, and indescribable joy rejoices the heart. He who has realized such a principle ceases to wander and remains balanced and self-mastered. He ceases to be a slave to passion and becomes a constructive master in the temple of destiny. The man dominated by the self, and not by a principle, changes his face when his selfish comforts are threatened. Resolutely determined to defend and protect his own interests, he considers all possible means to achieve this goal. He is constantly thinking about how to protect himself from his enemies, too self-centered to realize that he is his own enemy. The work of such a man is destroyed because he is far from truth and power. All effort based on the self fades away. Only work built on an indestructible principle endures. The man who relies on a principle is the same calm, fearless, and self-mastered man in all circumstances. When the hour of trial comes, and he must choose between his personal comforts and the truth, he relinquishes his advantages and remains steadfast. Even the idea of possible torture or death cannot disturb or divert him. The man of the self considers the loss of his wealth, comforts, or life to be the greatest misfortunes that can happen to him. The man of principles considers these incidents to be insignificant and not to be compared with the loss of character or truth. Abandoning truth is for him the only event that can truly be called a misfortune. Moments of crisis designate those who are supporters of darkness and those who are children of light. The era when disaster, ruin, and persecution threaten is the one that separates the sheep from the goats and shows, with reverence before subsequent eras, the men and women of power. It is easy for a man, as long as he can enjoy his possessions, to convince himself that he believes in and adheres to the principles of peace, fraternity, and universal love. But if his privileges are threatened, or if he imagines they are, he begins to cry out for war, showing that he believes in and supports strife, selfishness, and hatred, and not peace, fraternity, and love. He who does not abandon his principles when threatened with losing all earthly things, even his reputation and life, is the man of power, whose word and work will endure. He is the man whom the future world will honor, respect, and worship. Instead of abandoning the principle of divine love on which he stood and in whom he placed all his trust, Jesus endured extreme agony and deprivation, and today the world kneels at his feet, full of enthusiastic adoration. There is no path to acquiring spiritual power except through this inner illumination, which is the realization of spiritual principles, and these principles can only be realized through constant practice and application. Take the principle of divine love and meditate on it calmly and carefully to acquire a deep understanding. Let its light illuminate all your habits, actions, speech, and relationships with others, every one of your secret thoughts and desires. As you persevere on this path, divine love will be revealed to you with greater perfection, and your own errors will stand out more strikingly, prompting you to strive harder. And once you have glimpsed the incomparable majesty of this eternal principle, you will no longer be satisfied with your weakness, selfishness, or imperfection, but will pursue this love to renounce everything contrary to it and harmonize perfectly with it. And this state of inner harmony is spiritual power. Also appropriate other spiritual principles, such as purity and compassion, and apply them in the same manner. And being so demanding truth, You will not be able to stop or rest until the innermost part of your soul is free from all stain, and your heart is no longer capable of any harsh inclination, condemning and merciless. Only to the extent that you understand, realize, and uphold these principles will you acquire spiritual power, and this power will manifest in you through increasing nonchalance, patience, and balance. Nonchalance requires superior self-control. Grand patience is the very seal of divine knowledge, and maintaining unalterable calm amidst all the duties and distractions of life marks the man of power. It is easy to live in the world according to our own opinion. It is easier to live in solitude according to ours. But the great man is the one who, in the midst of the crowd, maintains with perfect gentleness the independence of solitude. Some mystics argue that perfection in nonchalance is the source of the power by which so-called miracles are accomplished. And truly, he who has achieved such perfect control of all his inner forces that no attack, however great, can destabilize him, even for a single moment, must be capable of guiding and directing those forces with a master's hand. Growing in self-control, patience, and balance is growing in strength and power, and you can only progress in this way by focusing your consciousness on a principle, like a child who, after many falls and many attempts to walk unaided, finally succeeds. So you must enter the path of power by first trying to stand alone, breaking away from the tyranny of custom, tradition, conformity, and others' opinions, until you manage to advance alone and upright among men. Trust your own judgment, be true to your own conscience, follow the light within you. All external lights are foreign wills. There will be those who tell you that you are foolish, that your judgment is wrong, that your conscience is bad, and that the light within you is darkness. But pay them no mind. If what they say is true, the sooner you discover it as a seeker of wisdom, the better, and you can only discover it by testing your powers. Therefore, courageously follow your path. Your conscience belongs to you at least, and to follow it is to be a man. To follow another's conscience is to be a slave. You will have many falls, endure many wounds, weather many blows for a time, but continue forward with faith, believing that a certain victory awaits you. Seek a rock, a principle, and once found, cling to it. Place it beneath your feet and rise until finally firmly fixed on its surface, you succeed in defying the fury of waves and storms of selfishness. For selfishness in all its forms is excess, weakness, death. Generosity in its spiritual aspect is preservation, power, life. As you grow in the spiritual and anchor yourself in principles, you will become as beautiful and unalterable as those principles. You will experience the sweetness of their immortal essence and realize the eternal and indestructible nature of God within you. No poisoned arrow can reach the upright man standing amidst storms of hatred, defying damage, injury, and prohibitions, surrounded by trembling slaves of destiny. Majestic in the strength of silent power, calm and unshaken, he remains immutably patient and steadfast even in the darkest hours of suffering. Time bows before him, death and perdition reject him, flashes of anger surround him, and deep thunders of hell rumble around his head, but he pays no heed, for they cannot kill him. He stands when earth, time, and space have heard. Protected by immortal love, armed with immutable truth, what can you know of loss and gain in knowing eternity? He does not move as shadows come and go. Call him immortal, call him truth, light and splendor of prophetic majesty. Thus requested amidst the powers of the night, clothed in the glory of divinity, the realization of selfless love is said to be Michelangelo sculpting every block of marble, a small, beautiful manifestation awaiting the expert hand to realize. Similarly, within each of us resides the divine image, awaiting the expert manipulation of faith and the chisel of patience to lead it to manifestation. And this divine image reveals and realizes itself as an undisturbed and selfless love, hidden deep within every human heart. Often it is covered by a hard and almost impenetrable mass. It is the spirit of divine love whose holy and pure essence is immortal and eternal. It is truth in man, which belongs to the Supreme, which is real and immortal. Everything else changes and passes away, Only this reality is permanent and enduring, and to realize this love through meticulous practice of the highest rectitude, to live in it and become fully aware of its existence, is to enter into immortality here and now, to unite with truth, with God, with the central heart of all things, and to know our own divine and eternal nature. To attain this love, to understand and experience it, one must work persistently and carefully on one's heart and mind, constantly renewing patience and strengthening faith. There will be much to stir and achieve before the divine image reveals its full glorious beauty. One who strives to attain and realize the divine will be subjected to extreme testing. And this is absolutely necessary, for how could one acquire this great patience without which there is neither true wisdom nor divinity? Occasionally, as he progresses, all his work will seem in vain and his efforts wasted. Sometimes a hasty gesture will ruin his image, and perhaps just when he believes his work is nearly finished, he will find it utterly destroyed, requiring him to start anew with his bitter past experience to guide and assist him. But one who is resolutely committed to realizing what is higher does not recognize this as defeat. All failures are apparent, not real. Each slip, each fall, each return to selfishness is a learned choice, an acquired experience from which one draws a nugget of wisdom that aids the one who strives to achieve his goal. Recognize that from your services, we can build a ladder. If we want to climb under our feet with every act of shame, it is to enter the path that infallibly leads to the divine. And the failures of one who recognizes himself in this way are as many dead selves on which we climb as if we were climbing steps to higher things. Once you recognize your failures, your sorrows and sufferings as voices that clearly tell you where you are weak and flawed, where you fall short of the true and divine, then you will begin to examine yourself insistently. Every misstep, every twinge of pain will show you where you need to work and what things you must eliminate from your heart to bring it closer to the likeness of the divine, to perfect love. And as you improve, gradually detaching yourself from inner selfishness, selfless love will reveal itself to you. And as you increase your patience and calm, and your arrogant, irritable temperament recedes from you, and the strongest desires and prejudices cease to dominate and enslave you, then you will know that the divine is awakening within you, that you are nearing the eternal heart, that you are not far from that selfless love, whose possession means peace and immortality. Divine love distinguishes itself from human loves in this supremely important characteristic: it is free from partiality. Human loves attach themselves to a particular object, excluding everything else, and when that object is taken away, the suffering is great and deep for the one who loves. Divine love encompasses the entire universe and, without attaching to any part, contains within itself the whole. One who achieves this, gradually purifying and expanding their human loves until all selfish and impure elements are eliminated, ceases to suffer. This is because human loves are narrow and limited, mixed with selfishness, causing suffering. No pain can result from a love that is so absolutely pure and seeks nothing for itself. However, human loves are absolutely necessary as stages towards the divine, and no soul is ready to partake in divine love until it has mastered the deepest and most intense human love. It is only through human loves and sufferings that one reaches and realizes divine love. All human loves are ephemeral, just like the forms to which they cling. But there is a love that is eternal and does not attach to appearances. All human loves encounter human hatreds, but there is a love that admits no opposition or reaction, divine and free from any stain of the self, which spreads its fragrance equally to all. Human loves are reflections of divine love and bring the soul closer to reality, to a love that knows neither pain nor change. It is good that the mother, united with passionate tenderness to the small form of helpless flesh resting on her breast, finds herself overwhelmed by the dark waters of sorrow when she sees it laid in the cold grave. It is good that her tears flow and her heart suffers, for only thus can she remember the ephemeral nature of sensory joys and objects and draw nearer to eternal and inexhaustible reality. It is good that the lover, brother, sister, husband and wife suffer deep anguish and are plunged into darkness when the object of their affection is taken from them, so that they may learn to direct their affection towards the invisible source of all things, where alone lies lasting satisfaction. It is good that the proud, the ambitious, and the selfish suffer defeat, humiliation, and misfortune so that they pass through the burning fire of affliction, for only thus can the wayward soul be made to reflect on the riddle of life, only thus can the heart be softened, purified, and prepared to receive truth. When the sting of distress pierces the heart of human love, when darkness, loneliness, and abandonment obscure the soul of friendship and trust, then the heart turns to the protective love of the eternal and finds rest in its silent peace. And the one who approaches this love is not turned away without comfort, not pierced by anguish or surrounded by darkness, never abandoned by the dark hour of trial. The glory of divine love can only be revealed in the heart tormented by pain, and the image of the heavenly state can only be perceived and attained when one sheds the lifeless and formless accumulations of ignorance and the self. Only this love, which seeks neither gratification nor personal reward, which makes no distinction and leaves no dissatisfaction, can be called divine. Men attached to themselves and to the dull shadows of evil tend to consider divine love as something belonging to a God who is out of their reach, as something distant that must always remain there. In truth, the love of God is far from the reach of the self, but when the heart and mind are emptied of self, then supreme and selfless love, the love that is of God or goodness, becomes an inner and permanent reality. And this inner execution of sacred love is in reality the love of Christ, of which so much is spoken and yet not understood, the love that not only saves the soul from sin, but also elevates it above the power of temptation. But how to achieve this grand result? The answer that truth has always given to this question is, empty yourself, and I will fill you. Divine love cannot be known as long as the self is alive, for the self is the negation of love. And how can what is known be denied as long as the stone of the self is not removed from the sepulchre of the soul? The immortal Christ, the pure spirit of love, crucified, dead, and buried up to now, will not be able to rid himself of the fetters of ignorance and manifest himself in all the majesty of his resurrection. You believe that the Christ of Nazareth was executed and then resurrected. I do not say that you are wrong in this belief, but you refuse to believe that the loving spirit of love is crucified daily on the cross of your selfish desires. So I can say that you are mistaken in this disbelief. You have not yet received even remotely the love of Christ. You say you have experienced salvation in the love of Christ. He saved you from your bad mood, your irritability, your vanity, your personal discontent, your judgment and condemnation of others. Otherwise, what did he save you from, and how did you realize the transforming love of Christ? One who has experienced divine love has become a new person and has ceased to be influenced and dominated by the old elements of the self. He is known for his patience, purity, self-control, deep-hearted charity, and unalterable gentleness. Divine or selfless love is not merely a simple feeling or emotion. It is a state of knowledge that destroys the dominion of evil and belief in it, and elevates the soul. The glorious achievement of the supreme good for the divine sage, knowledge and love, are one and indivisible. The entire world is moving towards the complete attainment of this divine love. To this end, the universe came into existence, and every approach towards happiness, every elevation of the soul towards objects, ideas, and ideals is an effort to achieve it. But the world does not currently exercise this love because it draws near to the fleeting shadow and, in its blindness, ignores the substance. Thus, suffering and pain persist and must continue until the world, having learned from its self-inflicted pains, discovers the selfless love. Wisdom is calm and full of peace, and this love, wisdom, peace, this tranquil state of mind and heart can be attained and realized by all who are willing to renounce the self, ready to humbly enter into the understanding of all that renouncing the self implies. There is no arbitrary power in the universe, and the strongest chains of fate to which men are bound are built by themselves. Men are chained to what causes their suffering because they desire it, because they love their chains, because they think their small and dark prison of the self is sweet and beautiful, and fear that if they abandon this prison, they will lose everything that is real and precious to possess. You suffer for yourselves, No one else compels you to. No one else holds you back from living and dying. And the inner strength that forged the chains and built the narrow and dark prison will want to do so when it discovers the futility of its prison, when long suffering has prepared it to receive unlimited light and love. As shadows follow the form and smoke comes after fire, so effect follows cause, and suffering as well as happiness are the consequences of men's thoughts and actions. There is no effect in the world around us that does not have its hidden or revealed cause in harmony with absolute justice. Men reap a harvest of suffering because in the past, whether near or distant, they have sown the seeds of evil. They also reap a harvest of happiness, resulting from having sown the seeds of good. If a man meditates on this and strives to understand it, then he will begin to sow only seeds of good and burn the hatred and weeds that he had previously cultivated in the garden of his heart. The world does not understand selfless love because it is obsessed with seeking its own pleasures and confined within the narrow limits of passing interests, thus confusing, in its ignorance, pleasures and interests with real and enduring things. Wrapped in the flames of carnal desires and burning with anguish, far from the pure and peaceful beauty of truth, feeding on the shells of error and self-deception, it is excluded from the abode of love that sees all. By not having this love, and being unable to understand it, men establish countless reforms that involve no inner sacrifice. Each imagines that his reform will straighten the world forever, while continuing to multiply evil by integrating it into his own heart. Only that can be called reform, which is dedicated to changing the human heart, for all evil originates therein. And it is only when the world, setting aside selfishness and partisan strife, has learned the lesson of divine love, that it will realize the golden age of universal blessing, that the rich cease to despise the poor, and the poor stop condemning the rich, that the greedy learn to give, and the lustful become pure, that partisans cease to dispute, and the uncharitable begin to forgive, that the envious strive to rejoice with others, and the slanderers are ashamed of their behavior. Those who follow this path, men and women, will see the golden age approaching. He who purifies his own heart is the one who benefits the world the most. However, although the world is currently and for many future ages excluded from the golden age, which is the realization of selfless love, you, if willing, can enter it now by rising above your selfish self. If you succeed in overcoming prejudice, hatred and condemnation, loving kindly and forgiving where there is hatred, contempt and disgust, selfless love dwells. It is only present in the heart that has abandoned all condemnation. You wonder how to love the drunkard, the hypocrite, the secretive, the murderer, whom you are obliged to reject and condemn. It is true that you cannot emotionally love these people, but when you say that you must necessarily reject and condemn them, you demonstrate that you do not know the great dominant love. For it is possible to attain a high state of inner illumination that enables you to understand the chain of causes by which these men have become what they are, to thus enter into their intense sufferings and to know the certainty of their final purification. With such knowledge, it will be utterly impossible for you to continue to despise or condemn them, and you will always think of them with perfect calm and deep compassion. If you love people and praise them only until they upset you in some way, or do something that you disapprove of and dislike as well, and you speak of them with scorn, then you are not following the love of God. If in your heart you continually accuse and condemn others, selfless love is hidden from you. He who knows that love is at the heart of all things and has confirmed its omnipotent power, prejudices will have no place in him. Men, not knowing this love, become judges and executioners of their fellows, forgetting that there are eternal judge and executioner, and to the extent that men diverge, having other points of view, reforms and particular methods, they are judged by other fanatical, unbalanced, judgmentless, insincere and dishonest men, and to the extent that they approach their own standard, they are deemed worthy of admiration. Those are the men centered on the self, but one whose heart is set on supreme love neither qualifies nor judges men, does not seek to impose his own views, does not convince of the superiority of his methods. Knowing the law of love, he lives it, and thus maintains the same quiet state of mind and gentle heart towards all, the degraded and the virtuous, the foolish and the wise, the educated and the uneducated, The selfish and the selfless all equally receive the blessing of his quiet thought. You can only attain this supreme knowledge, this divine love, through constant effort of self-discipline, by overcoming yourself. Only the pure in heart see God, and when your heart is sufficiently purified, you will enter into a new birth, and the love that does not die, change, or end in pain and sorrow will awaken in you, and you will be at peace. He who strives to attain divine love always seeks to surpass the spirit of condemnation, for where pure spiritual knowledge exists, there can be no condemnation, and it is only in the heart that has become incapable of condemning that love is perfected and fully accomplished. The Christian condemns the atheist mocks the Christian, the Catholic and the Protestant are constantly engaged in a war of words, and the spirit of strife and hatred reigns where peace and love should reign. He who hates his brother is a murderer, crucifying the divine spirit of love, and as long as you cannot regard men of all religions and those who have none with the same impartial spirit, free from all contempt and with perfect justice, then you must still strive for this love that he who possesses it gives, freedom and salvation, divine knowledge, selfless love that completely destroys the spirit of condemnation, dispels all evil, and elevates consciousness to the height of the pure division where love, goodness, and justice are seen as universal, supreme, omnipotent, and indestructible. Train your mind in strong, impartial, and gentle thought. Train your heart in purity and compassion. Train your tongue in silence and in honest and firm speech. Thus, you will enter the path of holiness and peace, and finally, you will obtain immortal love. Living in this way, without trying to change others, you will convince without arguing. You will teach without flattery. The wise will discover you, and without seeking to win men's opinion, you will win their hearts. For love is all-powerful, and the thoughts, deeds, and words of love can never disappear. Knowing that love is universal, supreme, omnipotent, freeing oneself from the difficulties of evil, abandoning inner worry, knowing that all men strive to realize truth in their own way, being satisfied without grief serene. All this is peace, joy, immortality, divinity, the realization of selfless love. I stood on the shore and saw the rocks resist the assault of the mighty sea, and when I thought about how they resisted countless blows through eternity, I said that to wear out this solid principle, the incessant efforts of the waves are in vain. But when I thought about how the rocks eroded and saw the sand and pebbles at my feet, poor passive remnants of exhausted resistance, moving where the waters were, I then saw ancient landmarks under the waves, and knew that the waters had the stones as their slaves. I saw the mighty work of the waters through their patient gentleness and ceaseless flow, how the proudest headland was brought low by them, and how massive hills were laid low, how the gentle drops conquered the adamant wall and brought it down. And then I knew that sin, hard and resistant, must eventually yield to the gentle and incessant current of love, which flows back and forth, always flowing. The proud rocks of the human soul, all resistance must be worn out and past, and every heart will eventually surrender to the infinite. From the beginning of time, despite its bodily appetites and desires, amidst all its obsession with earthly and ephemeral things, man has always been intuitively aware of the limited, transitory, and illusory nature of his material existence, and in his lucid and silent moments, he has sought to attain an understanding of the infinite, and has yearned anxiously for the serene reality of the eternal heart. While he vainly imagines that earthly pleasures are real and satisfying, pain and sorrow remind him at every moment of his true and limited nature. He always strives to believe that complete satisfaction lies in material things, but he is aware of an internal and persistent rebellion against this belief, which simultaneously rejects his essential mortality, for it is an inherent and eternal test that only in the immortal, the eternal, the infinite can find lasting satisfaction and continuous peace. Thus is the common ground of faith, the root and source of all religion, the soul of fraternity, and the heart of love. Man is essentially and spiritually divine and eternal, and immersed in mortality and preoccupied with anxiety, he always strives to enter into the consciousness of his true nature. The spirit of man is inseparable from the infinite, and can be satisfied with nothing else but that place. The burden of pain will continue to weigh upon the heart of man, and the shadows of sorrow will darken his path until he ceases to wander in the world of material dreams to return home, to the reality of the eternal. Like the smallest drop of water detached from the ocean contains all the qualities of the ocean, so man, stripped of his awareness of the infinite, contains within himself its likeness, and just as the drop of water must, by the law of its nature, eventually find its way back to the ocean and be lost in its silent depths, so man, by the infallible law of his nature, must return to his source and be lost in the vast ocean of the infinite. To reunite with the infinite is man's purpose. To enter into perfect harmony with the eternal law is wisdom, love, and peace, but the divine state is, and must always be, incomprehensible to the strictly personal aspect. Personality, separation, and selfishness are one and the same thing, besides being the antithesis of wisdom and divinity. Separation and selfishness cease through the unconditional surrender of personality, and man enters into possession of his divine heritage, immortality, and infinity. The earthly and selfish spirit considers this surrender of personality to be the greatest of misfortunes, the most irreparable loss. But it is the only supreme and incomparable blessing, the only real and lasting gain. The spirit that is not enlightened by the internal laws of being or on the nature and destiny of its own life clings to ephemeral appearances, to objects that have no lasting substance in them, and thus it momentarily disappears among the shattered debris of its own illusions. Men cling to the flesh and delight in it as if it were to last forever. Although they try to forget the proximity and inevitability of its disappearance, the fear of death and the loss of everything to which they cling darken their happiest hours, and the icy shadows of their own selfishness haunt them like an unrepentant spectre. With the accumulation of comforts and temporary pleasures, the divinity within men is corrupted and sinks deeper into materiality, into the ephemeral life of the senses. And where sufficient intellect exists, theories about the immortality of the flesh become unquestioned truths. When a man's soul is obscured by selfishness in any form, it loses the power of spiritual analysis and confuses the temporary with the eternal, the fleeting with the permanent, mortality with immortality, and error with truth. Thus the world is filled with theories and speculations that have no foundation in human experience. Every carnal body contains within itself, from the moment of its birth, the elements of its own destruction, and by the unalterable law of its own nature must die. The transient in the universe can never become permanent. The permanent can never be exhausted. The mortal cannot become immortal. The immortal can never die. The temporary cannot be eternal, nor can the eternal be temporary. Appearance will never turn into reality. Reality will not disappear into appearance. Error cannot become truth, and truth cannot be error. Man cannot immortalize the flesh, but by overcoming the flesh, by renouncing all its inclinations, he can enter into the realm of immortality. Only God possesses immortality, and only by realizing the consciousness state of God does man enter into immortality. All nature in its simple forms of life is changing, unstable, impermanent. Only the informing principle of nature endures. Nature is manifold and marked by separation. The informing principle is one and marked by unity. By overcoming the senses and inner selfishness, which means transcending nature, man emerges from the cocoon of the personal and illusory and rises towards the glorious light of the impersonal, the realm of universal truth from which all fleeting forms emanate. Therefore, men must practice detachment, conquer their animal inclinations, refuse to be enslaved by luxury and pleasure, practice virtue, and grow daily into ever higher virtue until ultimately they thrive in divinity and enter both the practice and understanding of humanity. Submission, forgiveness, compassion, and love, whose practice and understanding destroy divinity, goodwill of insight, and only he who has conquered his personality to have a single mental attitude, that of goodwill towards all creatures, possesses divine insight and is capable of distinguishing the true from the false. Therefore, the supremely good man is one who is wise and divine, the enlightened seer, the knower of the eternal. If you find constant kindness, enduring patience, great humility, grace of speech, self-control, self-forgetfulness, and deep and abundant sympathy, seek there the highest wisdom, aspire to the company of one who has realized the divine, lives with the eternal, and has united with the infinite. Do not trust one who is impatient and angry, proud and clings to pleasures while refusing to abandon selfish privileges, and who practices neither goodwill nor excessive compassion, for such a person has no wisdom. All his knowledge is vain, and his actions and words will disappear, for they are based on the transient. It is necessary for man to surrender himself, to overcome the world and renounce the personal. Only by this path can he enter into the heart of the infinite. The world, the body, and the personality are mirages in the desert of time, transient dreams in the dark night of spiritual sleep. Those who have crossed the desert and are spiritually awakened are the only ones who have understood the universal reality, where all appearances disappear and where dream and deception are destroyed. There is a great law that demands unconditional obedience, a unifying principle that is the basis of all diversity, an eternal truth in which all earthly problems pass like shadows. To realize this law, this unity, this truth, is to enter into the infinite and merge with the eternal. Regulating one's life on the great law of love is to enter into rest, harmony, peace, by detaching from any participation in evil and discord, abandoning all resistance to evil and omission of what is good, and falling back into the unshakable obedience of a sacred inner calm. This means being in the most intimate heart of things, reaching a living and conscious experience of this eternal and infinite principle that must always remain a hidden mystery to the simple perceptive intellect. Until this principle is realized, the soul will not find peace. One who realizes it is truly wise, not with the intelligence of scholars, but with the simplicity of a pure heart and divine humanity. Entering into the realization of the infinite and eternal is to rise above time, the world and the body, which constitute the kingdom of darkness, to establish oneself in immortality, heaven and spirit, which are the realm of light. Entering into the infinite is not merely a theory or a feeling, it is a life experience, the product of frequent practice of inner purification. When one no longer believes, even vaguely, that the body is the true self, when all appetites and desires are completely subdued and purified, when emotions are calm and submissive, and when the back and forth of the intellect ceases and remains in a perfect stillness, only then at that moment does consciousness merge with the infinite. It is only at that moment that childlike wisdom and profound peace are assured. Men grow weary and age due to life's dark problems and eventually die, leaving them unresolved, for they cannot see their way out of the personality's darkness, too distracted by their limitations, seeking to save their personal life. Man loses the greatest impersonal life in truth by clinging to the fleeting, thus closing off knowledge of the eternal. By surrendering oneself, all difficulties can be overcome, and there is no error in the universe that the fire of inner sacrifice cannot burn like straw. No problem, however great, can disappear like a shadow under the extraordinary light of goodness. Problems exist only in our own illusions, created by ourselves, and disappear when the self is abandoned. The self and error are equal. Error is enveloped in the darkness of impenetrable complexity, while eternal simplicity is the glory of truth. Self-love turns men away from truth and deprives them of the deepest, purest, and most enduring happiness. Seeking their personal happiness, says Carlyle, man ignores something higher than the love of happiness. He may not need happiness, and instead find a blessing in its place. Do not love pleasure, but love God. This is the eternal yes in which all contradictions are resolved. He who walks and acts thus prospers. He who has renounced this self, this personality that men cherish most and hold with fierce tenacity, has left behind all perplexity and entered into a simplicity so deeply simple that the world, wrapped in a web of errors, considers it madness. Yet such a person has attained the highest wisdom and rests in the infinite. He succeeds effortlessly, and all problems disappear before him, for he has entered the realm of reality and faces not the changing effects, but the unchanging principles of things. He is enlightened by a wisdom higher than reason, just as the latter is compared to animality. Having renounced his lustful desires, errors, opinions, and prejudices, he has succeeded in possessing the knowledge of God, eliminating selfish desire from heaven and with it, the ignorant fear of hell. By renouncing even the love of life itself, he acquires supreme beatitude and eternal life, the life that unites life and death and knows its own immortality. By renouncing everything without limitations, he has gained everything and rests in peace, sheltered in the infinite. Only he who is liberated from himself to such an extent that he is as content to be eliminated as to live, or to live as being eliminated, is fit to enter into the infinite. Only he who, ceasing to trust his passing self, has learned to believe immeasurably in the great law or in the supreme good, is ready to partake in eternal beatitude. For such a person, there are no more regrets, disappointments, or regrets, for where all selfishness has ended, these sufferings cannot exist. He knows that everything that happens is for his own good and is content, for he is no longer the slave of the self, but of the supreme. He is no longer affected by the changes of the earth, and when he hears of wars and rumors of conflicts, his peace is not disturbed. Where men become angry and cynical and arrogant, he brings compassion and love, even if appearances contradict him. He knows that the world progresses, and that through its laughter and tears, through its life and cares, through its follies and labors, weaving in and out of view, from beginning to end, through all virtue and all sin rolled up from the great coil of God's progress, runs the golden thread of light. When a fierce storm rages, no one is irritated, for they know it will pass quickly, and when the storms of battle ravage the world, the wise man, looking with the eyes of truth and pity, knows they will pass, and from the remaining broken hearts pieces will be built of the temple of immortal wisdom. Greatly patient, infinitely compassionate, deeply silent and pure, his presence is a blessing. And when he speaks, men ponder his words in their hearts and through them rise to higher levels of glory. Such is the one who has entered into the infinite, who, by the power of supreme sacrifice, has deciphered the holy mystery of life, questioning life, destiny, and truth. Search the dark and labyrinthine sphinx that spoke to me through this strange and wonderful thing. The occultation resides only in blinded eyes, and only God can see the form of God. Seek to unravel this hidden mystery in vain by paths of blindness and pain. But when I found the way of love and peace, the occultation ceased and I was no longer blind. Then I saw God with the eyes of God. Saints, sages, and saviors, the law of service, the spirit of love manifesting as a perfect and accomplished life, are the crown of being and the ultimate goal of knowledge on this earth. The measure of a man's truth is the measure of his love, and truth is far from him whose life is not governed by love. The intolerant and the condemners, though they profess the highest religion, have the smallest measure of truth, while those who practice patience, calmly listening without anger to all parties, to draw thoughtful and impartial conclusions on all problems and issues, hold truth in its greatest measure. The final proof of wisdom is this: how does a man live? What spirit does he manifest? How does he act under trials and temptations? Many men boast of possessing truth, but continually let themselves be carried away by pain, disappointment, and passion, collapsing at the slightest difficulty that arises. Truth would not exist if it were not unalterable, and to the extent that a man relies on truth, he becomes steadfast in virtue, rises above his passions, emotions, and changing personality. Men create ephemeral dogmas and call them truth. Truth cannot be formulated. It is original and always beyond the reach of intellect. It can only be lived through practice. It can only manifest with an untouched heart and a perfect life. He who, amidst the abundance of schools, beliefs, and factions, possesses truth is one who lives it, practices it, one who, having risen above these proliferations by transcending them, no longer engages with them but places himself elsewhere, calm, self-mastered, liberated from all dispute, prejudice, condemnation, and extends to all the joyful and selfless love of the divinity within him. He who is patient, calm, gentle, and forgiving in all circumstances manifests truth. Truth will never be demonstrated by verbal arguments and scholarly treatises, for if men do not feel truth in infinite patience, immortal forgiveness, and total compassion, no words can prove it to them. It is easy for the passionate to be calm and patient when alone or in calmness. Likewise, it is easy for the uncharitable to be gentle and kind when treated kindly. But he who retains his patience and calm in every trial, who remains greatly gentle and kind in the most difficult circumstances, he alone possesses immaculate truth. And this is because such lofty virtues belong to the divine and can only be manifested by someone who has attained the highest wisdom, who has renounced his passionate and selfish nature, who has realized the supreme and unalterable law and has harmonized with it. Let men therefore cease to discuss with passion and vanity about truth and think, speak, and do those things that produce harmony, peace, love, and goodwill. Let them practice the virtue of the heart and humbly and carefully seek the truth that frees the soul from all error and sin, from all that defiles the human heart and darkens like an endless night the path of wandering souls on earth. There is a great law that encompasses everything and is the foundation and cause of the universe. The law of love has been called by different names in various countries and at different times, but behind all these names, the same unalterable law can be discovered by the eye of truth. Names, religions, and personalities are ephemeral, but the law of love always remains. To possess the knowledge of this law, to enter into conscious harmony with it, is to become immortal, invincible, indestructible. It is through the soul's effort to realize this law that men come again and again to live, suffer, and die, and when suffering is attained, personality disappears. Mortal flesh and death are destroyed as consciousness joins with eternity. The law is absolutely impersonal, and its most important expression is that of service. When the purified heart has realized truth, it is called upon to make the greatest, holiest, and final sacrifice, that of the well-deserved enjoyment of truth. Through this sacrifice, the divinely free soul dwells among men, occupying a body of flesh, happy to be among the humblest and smallest, and to be esteemed as a servant of all humanity. This grand humility, manifested by the saviors of the world, is the seal of divinity. And he who has eliminated personality, who has become a living and visible manifestation of the spirit of impersonal, eternal, and unlimited love, is the only one worthy of receiving the unconditional adoration of transcendence. Only he who manages to humble himself with this divine simplicity, involving the extinction of the self and spreads over all the spirit of selfless love, is elevated above all measure. He is given spiritual dominion over the hearts of humanity. All the great spiritual masters, deprived of luxury, comfort, and personal rewards, have renounced temporary power and lived and taught limitless truth. Compare their lives and teachings, and you will find the same simplicity, the same self-sacrifice, the same humility, love and peace they preach and live. They taught the same eternal principles that destroy all evil. Those who have been acclaimed and worshipped as saviors of humanity are actually manifestations of the great impersonal law, and as such, they were free from passion and prejudice. Having no special opinions or doctrines to preach and defend, they never sought to convert or proselytize. Living in the greatest kindness, in supreme perfection, their sole objective was to uplift humanity, manifesting this kindness in thought, word, and deed. They stand between personal man and impersonal God, serving as an example for the salvation of humanity enslaved to itself. Men immersed in the self and unable to understand that kindness is absolutely impersonal refuse divinity to all saviors except their own, thus introducing personal hatred and doctrinal controversy. By defending their own viewpoint with compassion, they consider each other as pagans or infidels, and thus annul in their lives the selfless beauty and holy grandeur of existence, as well as the teachings of their own masters. Truth cannot be limited. It can never be the special invention of one man, school, or nation, and when personality intervenes, truth is lost. The glory of the saint, the sage, the savior, lies in realizing the deepest humility, the greatest selflessness. Having renounced everything, even one's own personality, all their actions are holy and enduring because they are free from any stain of ego. They give, they offer, but never think of receiving. They work without regretting the past, without anticipating the future, and without seeking rewards. The great farmer plowed and prepared his land, he sowed. He knows he has done all he could and now must trust in nature, and patiently wait for the course of time to yield the harvest. None of his expectations will alter the result. Conversely, he who has attained truth is a sower of the seeds of kindness, purity, love, and peace, without expecting and without ever seeking results, knowing there is the great governing law that produces its own harvest in due time, which is the source of preservation as well as destruction. Men, not understanding the divine simplicity of a deeply selfless heart, regard their particular Savior as the manifestation of a special miracle, as something entirely distant and different from the nature of things, and as if in his ethical excellence he were eternally inaccessible to all humanity. This attitude of disbelief, as it is according to man's divine perfectibility, paralyzes effort and attaches men's souls like cords to sin and suffering. Jesus grew in wisdom and was perfected through suffering. Jesus became what he truly was, just as Buddha became what he was, and every holy man became so through unwavering perseverance in self-sacrifice. Once you recognize this and realize that with vigilant effort and confident perseverance, you can rise above your lower nature, then great and glorious will be the prospects of glory that open before you. Buddha vowed not to abandon his efforts until he achieved the state of perfection, and he accomplished his purpose. What saints, sages, and saviors have achieved, you too can achieve if you follow the path they followed and indicated, the path of sacrificial service. Truth is very simple, it says, "Abandon the self, come to me by detaching from everything that soils you, and I will make you find rest." All the mountains of commentary piled upon it cannot hide it from the heart that ardently seeks righteousness. It does not require learning. It can be known despite its many disguises by the wandering and selfish man. The beautiful simplicity and clear transparency of truth remain unchanged and complete, and the selfless heart enters and participates in its shining light. Truth is not realized by elaborating complex theories or constructing speculative philosophies, but by weaving the net of inner purity, by building the temple of a pure life. He who embarks on this holy path begins to master his passions. This is the virtue that is the principle of holiness, and it is the beginning of perfection. The totally earthly man satisfies all his desires, and the only restriction he practices is that demanded by the law of the earth in which he lives. The virtuous man arrests his passions, the saint attacks the enemy of truth in the fortress of his own heart, and reigns in every selfish and impure thought, while the holy man is one who is liberated from passion and every impure thought, for whom kindness and purity have become as natural as the fragrance and color of the flower. The holy man is divinely wise. He alone knows truth in its fullness and has found permanent rest and peace. For him, evil has ended. It has disappeared into the universal light of goodness. Holiness is the mark of wisdom, Krishna told Prince Arjuna. Humility, truth, passivity, patience, honor, respect for sages, purity, steadfastness, self-mastery, disregard for the details of the senses, self-sacrifice, perception of the certainty of evil in birth, death, old age, illness, suffering, and sin. A heart always calm in good fortune as in bad, resolute efforts to attain the deepest perception of the soul, and the grace to understand what gain was possible. This is true wisdom, Prince, and what is not thus is ignorance. He who struggles tirelessly against his own selfishness and strives to replace it with integral love is a saint, whether he lives in a country house or amid wealth and influence, whether he preaches or remains in obscurity. For the earthly man who begins to aspire to higher things, the saint, like gentle Saint Francis of Assisi, conquering Saint Anthony, is a glorious and inspiring vision. Similarly captivating is the image of the sage sitting serenely, victorious over sin and pain, more tormented by regrets or remorse, and not even temptation can reach him. But even the sage is drawn to an even more glorious vision, that of the Savior, who actively manifests his knowledge in selfless deeds, thus making his divinity more powerful for good, delving into the throbbing, afflicted, and aspiring heart of humanity. And this alone is true service, forgetting oneself out of love for all, losing oneself in work for the whole. O you vain and foolish man, what do you think your many works can save you? Enchained to every error, you speak loudly of yourself, your work, and your many sacrifices, and you magnify your importance. Know this: although your fame fills the whole earth, all your work will turn to dust, and you yourself will be considered the most insignificant in the kingdom of truth. Only impersonal work can live. The works of the self are useless and ephemeral. If duties, however modest, are performed without self-interest and with joyful sacrifice, then they achieve true service and lasting work. When works, however brilliant and apparently successful, are done out of egoistic love, there is ignorance of the law of service, and the work perishes. The world has received a great and divine lesson to learn the lesson of absolute altruism. The saints, sages, and saviors of all time are those who have submitted to this task, learned it, and lived it. All the scriptures of the world are designed to teach this single lesson. All the great masters repeat it. It is too simple for the world, which, in despising it, stumbles on the complex paths of selfishness. A pure heart is the goal of all religion and the beginning of divinity. To seek this righteousness is to tread the path of truth and peace, and he who embarks on this path will soon feel this immortality, independent of birth and death, and realize that in the divine balance of the universe, no humble effort is lost. The divinity of a Krishna, a Gautama, or a Jesus is the supreme glory of sacrifice, the end of the soul's pilgrimage in matter and mortality, and the world will not have finished its long journey until every soul has become like them and entered into the joyful realization of its own divinity. Great glory crowns the heights of hope for the ardently fought battle. Bright honor rounds the whitened head that has made powerful and beautiful works. Riches come to the one who strives on the paths of golden gain, but greater glory awaits the one who, in the bloodless struggle against ego and evil, adopts, in love, a sacrificial life. And the most dazzling honor crowns the brow of the one who, amidst the disdain of the blind idolaters of the ego, accepts the crown of thorns. The most just and pure riches come to the one who strives greatly to walk in the paths of love and truth, to soften human lives, and who, through good service to humanity, exchanges fleeting glory for eternal light, joy and peace, and the robes of heavenly flame. The attainment of perfect peace in the outer universe is incessant agitation, constant change and turmoil, but at the heart of all things exists undisturbed rest. In this profound silence dwells the eternal. Man partakes of this duality, and both the change and agitation of the surface and the eternal rest of peace are contained within him. Just as there are silent depths in the ocean that not even the fiercest storm can reach, so too are there silent and holy abysses in the heart of man that the storms of sin and pain can never disturb. To reach this silence and live consciously in it is peace. In the outer world discord reigns, but in the heart of the universe uninterrupted harmony prevails. The human soul, torn by discordant passions and pains, blindly seeks the harmony of the sinless state. To attain this state and live consciously in it is peace. Hatred destroys human lives, motivates persecution, and leads nations into ruthless war. However, men, though they do not understand why, maintain a certain faith in the shadow of perfect love. To attain this love and live consciously in it is peace. And this inner peace, this silence, this harmony, this love, is the kingdom of heaven, so difficult to attain because few are willing to renounce themselves and become like little children. The gate of heaven is very narrow and tiny. It cannot be perceived by foolish men blinded by the vain illusions of the world. Even the seers who discern the path and seek to enter find the gate closed and difficult to open. Its massive bolts are pride and passion, greed and lust. Men cry, "Peace, peace, Maj," where there is only discord, trouble and strife. Outside of this wisdom, inseparable from self-abandonment, there can be no real and lasting peace. Peace born of social comfort, fleeting pleasure or earthly victory, is transient by nature and burns in the heat of fiery trial. Only heavenly peace persists through all trials, and only the selfless heart can know the peace of heaven. Only holiness is eternal peace. Self-discipline leads to it, as does the light of ever-growing wisdom, and the pilgrim, on his journey, participates in so far as you engage in the path of virtue. But it is fully realized only when the self disappears in the consummation of a pure life. That is peace. Overcome self-love and the lust of life, uproot the passion rooted in the heart. Quiet the inner struggle, or listen if you want to reach the light that never fades, the joy that never ends, and the tranquility that cannot be disturbed. If you want to leave behind forever your sins, your pains, your anxieties and perplexities, if you want to partake in that deliverance, in that supremely glorious life, then discipline yourself. Bring every thought, every impulse, every desire into perfect obedience to the divine power that dwells within you. There is no other path to peace. If you refuse to take it, your many prayers and strict adherence to ritual will be defective and useless. Neither gods nor angels can help you. Only he who overcomes receives the white stone of life generated, on which is inscribed the new and infallible name. Step away for a moment from external things, from sensory pleasures, intellectual arguments, from the noise and excitement of the world. Withdraw into the innermost place of your heart, free from the sacrilegious interruption of all selfish desires. There you will find deep silence, sacred calm, blessed rest. Meditate there. The pitiless gaze of truth will open within you, and you will see things as they truly are. This sacred place within you is your real and eternal being. It is the divine, and only when you identify with it can it be said that you are of sound mind. It is the abode of peace, the temple of wisdom, the home of immortality. Outside this inner place of rest, this mountain of vision, there can be no true peace or knowledge of the divine. If you can stay there for a minute, an hour, a day, you could stay there forever. All your sins, pains, fears, and anxieties are yours. You can hold on to them or let them go at your own will. You maintain your suffering of your own accord. You can achieve permanent peace through your own efforts, by renouncing what binds the soul and is destructive to peace. The angels of peace and divine joy are always close. If you do not see them, hear them, live with them, it is because you are not willing and you prefer the company of evil spirits within you. You are what you want to be, what you desire to be, what you prefer to be. You can begin to purify yourself, and in doing so you will attain peace. Or you can refuse to purify yourself and thus remain in suffering. Then turn away from the agitation and fever of life. Turn away from the burning heat of the self and enter into that inner place of rest where the refreshing breezes of peace will calm, renew, and restore you. Leave behind the storms of sin and anguish. Why be troubled and tempted when God's peace refuge is yours? Renounce all self-seeking, all self, and behold, the peace of God is yours. Subdue the animal within you. Conquer all unbridled selfishness, all discordant voices. Transform the base metals of your selfish nature into the pure gold of love, and you will realize the life of perfect peace. By thus mastering, by thus conquering, by thus transforming, you will cross or listen, while you live in human flesh, the dark waters of mortality, and you will reach that shore where the storms of pain, sin, and suffering, and the darkness of uncertainty cannot reach. Standing on that shore, holy, compassionate, awakened and self-mastered, and joyful with endless happiness, you will realize that the spirit is never born, the spirit will never cease to be. Time, end, and beginning are dreams without birth and without death, and the spirit remains unchanged forever. Death has not touched it at all. Although its house may seem dead, then you will understand the meaning of sin, pain, suffering, and that their end is wisdom. You will know the cause and result of existence, and with this understanding you will enter into rest, for it is the beatitude of immortality. It is unalterable joy. It is knowledge without obstacles, wisdom without stain, and eternal love. This, and only this, is the realization of perfect peace. You who want to teach men the truth, have you crossed the desert of doubt? Have you been purified by the fires of pain? Have the demons of opinion from your human heart been driven out? Is your soul so just that no false thought can shelter it? You who want to teach men love, have you crossed the place of despair? Have you cried in the dark night of grief? Freed now from your pain, take care of your human heart with compassionate kindness. looking at evil hatred with constant attention. You who want to teach men peace, have you crossed the vast ocean of struggle? Have you found on the shores of silence the liberation from all wild agitation of life from your human heart? Has all struggle disappeared, leaving only truth, love, and peace? Love.